Azedine and his sister Ariel were born from a man's womb, the result of a dark curse. Azedine was born without eyes, with nothing but blank flesh where they should have been. Because of this, the leader of the Herald clan wanted to slaughter him, believing it would spare him from future suffering. However, Aldis revealed a shocking truth. Despite having no eyes, Azedine could still see. His sister Ariel, on the other hand, had rare eyes. She was exceptionally skilled in martial arts and considered a prodigy, while Azedine was constantly crushed and bullied by the other kids. He was so weak that even a short run made him vomit. Eventually, even a frustrated Ariel snapped. She slashed Azedine's empty eye sockets, claiming the scars looked better than the skin. Later, a man-eating elf took Azedine as a disciple, helping him forge himself to become powerful enough for revenge. From then on, whenever someone drew a triangle on the ground and placed the clan's emblem at the center, Azedine would instantly appear. Meanwhile, his sister Ariel betrayed the Herald clan and became a traitor. Years passed, and everyone thinks this is a legend. One day, in a distant place, this man hung several men from trees and ordered their wives to support them with their own arms. He declared that if the women collapsed, the rope would tighten and their husbands would die. It was a cruel game of endurance and despair. Among the condemned, one couple remained alive. The Lord, a tyrant with the blood of divine kings, ordered the husband to be hung and commanded the wife to hold him up. He explained coldly, if she gave in, his blood flow would be cut off. She begged for mercy for her husband, but the Lord did not waver. The Lord's master swordsman, a silent witness to such barbarity, did not dare to intervene. The blood running through his master's veins made him untouchable. His word was law. Still, something in his gaze showed an internal conflict. He knew this was unjust. In front of the master, the Lord whipped the wife. The marks multiplied. Blood flowed, but she did not let go of her fiancé's arms. She refused to fall. She refused to abandon him. The Lord, bored by her resistance, decided to leave her there to faint on her own. By dusk, fate was sealed for almost everyone. The other women fell from thirst and exhaustion, dragging their husbands to their deaths. But that wife still resisted. Her arms trembled. Her eyes no longer blinked, but she did not yield. He begged her to flee. She refused. In a final act of hope, the woman used a gold coin she had hidden in her clothes, drew a triangle on the ground, and placed the coin in the center, an ancient symbol to make a contract with the herald of the heretic clan, elite assassins rumored to be able to kill even nobles with the blood of gods. Many called it a legend. They, however, had nothing else left. In the dead of night, the Lord's master returned. He brought water and said there was no longer any reason to continue, that she should flee while she still could. But as soon as she drank, she rose again and returned to her post. She held her husband as if no time had passed. She then asked, "What is your name? I will tell the herald to spare your life when he arrives." The master, with clenched fists and a heavy heart, left and said he did not believe in that legend. If the Lord knew he was helping the girl, his death would be certain. The contract takes 3 days. They waited. On the third night, finally, she collapsed. Her arms let go. Her body fell, lifeless. She died on her feet but refused to fall. Only when the wind blew did her body rest upon the ground. The master found her like that, motionless, but with an expression that was not one of suffering. And it was exactly then, when all seemed lost, that a man appeared. The legend was real, and Zebeck felt his presence almost like a ghost's. He warned he would cut the knight down if he moved, and that he should not turn around. Zebeck asked if the newcomer was a herald. The man confirmed it, then questioned if Zebeck was a knight, or intended to help. The knight introduced himself as Zebeck, from the king's church. The herald explained he had only asked as a precaution, then inquired if Zebeck was a contractor or not. "If a holy knight of the church wants to make a contract, that would be an interesting sight for me," he commented. Zebeck, however, felt the herald was trying to humiliate him and grew irritated. Yet, the herald understood the deceased girl was his contractor, but since she had died, he had merely gained a gold coin without doing anything. He asked Zebeck what was happening. Zebeck replied that if the herald sheathed his sword and stepped back, he might go against his honor and tell him everything. At that moment, the masked herald sheathed his sword and retreated a considerable distance. The knight found the herald's presence so strange, almost ghostly. The herald was confident he would not be easily attacked, nor did he expect an ambush. The herald knew that if Zebeck was a holy knight of the church, then courage was something he must possess. Zebeck asks if the herald is a mage. The herald replies that everyone in his clan is, except for him. Then Zebeck challenges him, asking if everything he'd done wasn't magic. The herald explains it's hard to distinguish a superhuman's physical abilities from magic. Zebeck doesn't understand what the herald means, and asks for his name and herald rank. However, the herald hesitates to reveal his name and remains silent. The knight, Zebeck of the king's church, states states his name again, hoping to earn the man's trust. In that moment, the herald introduces himself as Azedine of the 108 Spirits, the Emperor's herald. The 108 Spirits are considered the lowest rank in the herald clan. Yet, everything Azedine has shown so far screams that he's anything but ordinary. Azedine states that, as promised, he wants Zebeck to tell him what happened there. As the knight recounts the grim events, the contract solidifies, and the very air around them shifts. An owl lands on Herald Azedine's shoulder and speaks, "Even though I had the answer to the request, your contractor died, so I earned a gold coin without doing anything." The owl's words shock the holy knight. Azedine, meanwhile, was already gearing up for his next mission. However, before the herald left, the knight called him. He argued, "Even with the contractor's death, you can't just take the reward and leave." The herald replied, "My master would suffer if the request were completed." Zebeck, enraged, declared to the soulless profane that he wouldn't allow it. He drew his sword, vowing to strike him down. The herald retorted, "You'd hurt someone with a sword that stays silent in the face of injustice?" The knight flinched at the herald's words. "That's sad." The comment struck him with a morbid chill. He asked, "Are you angry with someone? Is it me? Or are you angry with yourself for turning your back on so much injustice?" This deeply infuriated the holy knight, who demanded, "What do you know?" Azedine then asked, "Do you know about the constellations, their names, the myths that surround them?" The knight questioned, "Why bring that up now? What answer do you expect from me?" Azedine explained that humans can see the same thing, but feel different things. For some, a constellation might seem like the protagonist of a myth, while for others it might mean nothing more than a pale, trembling light in the darkness. Similarly, your perception of this devastation might be vastly different from other soldiers who simply don't see the injustice. Knight Zebeck, however, insisted it was no different for him. He confessed that he had been powerless to stop such horrors. As a knight of the church, he was sworn to revere those who protected the divine lineage. Herald Azedine declared, "I don't want to fight you, holy knight. After all, if you feel pity for the girl, then your sword isn't my enemy." In that instant, Azedine's sword flashed, severing the rope binding the man to the tree. Then he asked, "Is there a shovel nearby?" It seemed he wanted to bury the two bodies with some dignity. When Azedine declared he would give them a proper funeral, the knight was utterly stunned. Kazul, however, wanted the bodies to be hung from trees and turn into undead later. A scene like that would serve to reaffirm his power. Thus, burying the dead was a direct defiance of Kazul's will. The herald declared that a shovel wasn't needed and began digging with his bare hands. Just then, the holy knight reached for his sheathed sword, plunging it into the ground. The blindfolded herald was impressed. Instead of attacking, the knight began digging too. Time passed as the two men dug graves for the husband and wife. Azedine began a prayer to the Archangel of Wisdom, Courage, and Mercy, asking for pity on the souls of the recently deceased. A man from the Herald clan using a prayer from the Order of Saviors was unusual. Azedine explained he admired their ideology. The knight found it absurd to abandon one's birth clan's destiny and serve heresy. The herald retorted, "If I don't uphold what I believe is right, my birth would have been meaningless." Zebeck asked what Azedine liked about the Order of Saviors. Azedine didn't answer. Instead, he drew a bow and arrow from his waist, gripping it tight. He announced that a significant individual was approaching from a specific direction. This comment shocked the knight, who turned to see several soldiers closing in. The young master, mounted on his horse, appeared and asked, "Do you like the farmer girl, knight?" He added, "You could have just told me, knight. She's quite pretty for a commoner from the countryside." He had discovered the holy knight was looking after the girl, and with him came 20 armed soldiers. Even the knight stood no chance against them all. The noble demanded, "Who is that blindfolded man pointing an arrow at me?" Before he could get an answer, the heretic Azedine unleashed an arrow straight at him. The arrow struck a soldier directly in the eye, felling him instantly. Everyone watched in shock at the arrow's precision, hitting a distant soldier amidst the crowd. Instantly, the heretic knocked another arrow and fired it towards the soldiers. The arrow flew with incredible speed, and the soldiers braced themselves, raising their shields for protection. But even with their defenses, one soldier felt a devastating impact, his shield shattering. He immediately screamed in agony, foaming at the mouth and collapsing to the ground, defeated before his comrades. Everyone was utterly shocked. No shield could withstand that arrow. Zebeck was stunned, for the arrow had pierced the shield and moved like a serpent. Returning to the earlier question about what he liked in the Order of Saviors, Azedine declared, "I believe a person's worth is determined by their beliefs and actions, not by their birth. Someone born with the blood of the divine king who seeks to massacre the people cannot be called noble." Then, he aimed an arrow directly at the young master, who reeled in shock and cursed the soulless heretic. He screamed at Zebeck, "The order is to eliminate the soulless heretic." Zebeck. At that moment, the masked man leaped incredibly high, soaring above everyone. He aimed his arrow at the soldiers, who recoiled in fear at his presence. In an instant, he released the arrow, felling another soldier with a precise shot. Next, he knocked 2 more arrows and unleashed them, taking down more knights. As he began to descend from his leap, soldiers tried to impale him with their spears. One soldier thrust a spear, and the heretic landed his feet squarely on it. Then, he launched himself into another leap, spinning in mid-air. Mid-spin, he loosed 3 more arrows, striking soldiers directly in the face, eliminating them with ease. One arrow grazed the young master, leaving him utterly stunned. His goal wasn't to kill the young master, but to incapacitate him permanently. He continued to dispatch the man's soldiers as if they were nothing. Then, the noble demanded, "Who are you?" The heretic replied, "My name is Azedine." He appeared right behind the noble as he declared himself a herald. At that moment, all the soldiers were aghast that he was a soulless heretic. As he prepared another shot, the knights realized he was out of arrows. To everyone's surprise, he decided to punch the noble square in the face. The punch sent him flying off his horse, crashing hard to the ground. He then put away his bow, out of ammunition. On the ground, the young noble groaned, clutching his eye in pain. From behind him, a knight charged, roaring in fury, attempting to strike the herald from behind with his sword. Azedine easily dodged, countering with a powerful punch to the knight's face. Azedine declared, "I've thinned your numbers with my arrows. If you're brave enough, come at me now that I have a sword in hand." Then, as if remembering something, he plunged the sword into the ground. The knights wonder why he's so obsessed with castration. They think the man is insane, while from a tree, his owl watches the scene. Moments later, he surveys the area, littered with defeated bodies. Sword in hand, he strides towards the young master, who has been waiting for this. Scum like him, who inflict pain on others, must pay the price. But before he could act, a blinding light erupts. One of the noble's soldiers feels himself going blind. The noble, however, feels nothing, proving his unparalleled bloodline. The soulless heretic, an eye covered by a band, delivers a sword strike. The blow is deep, sending a torrent of fluid gushing from the young man's neck. He collapses to his knees, screaming in agony after the attack, demanding to know what the herald is doing to him since he's still alive. Noticing the noble's confusion, the herald asks if he truly didn't understand what just happened. The herald grabs the noble by his hair, and the noble offers everything he has, claiming to belong to the sacred Yaegas family. Unfortunately for the noble, Azedine is merely a slayer of sanctities, a herald. Azedine rejects all his offers, as Zebeck watches the scene from afar. At that moment, the young master begins to cry out for the holy knight's help. The knight, however, claims he cannot see the scene and makes no move to aid his master. Immediately, the noble starts cursing him, reiterating his sacred bloodline and demanding to be saved. The fact that he committed wrongs against commoners shouldn't be a reason for the knight not to save him. In truth, the herald believes he will continue to live with great vigor. He deems this attitude correct and declares that he must live positively. As he picks up a small knife, he tells the noble he'll need to live with positivity. He then begins to punish the young master, who screams in acute pain. His bloodshot eyes reveal his agony as he screams incessantly. Even without a contractor, the herald believes he acted with care and that the emperor's law was enforced. Hearing this, the young noble collapses to the ground, defeated and powerless. At that moment, the holy knight draws his sword from its sheath. He declares that, as a member of the king's church, he cannot allow the herald to speak of the emperor's law and walk away unscathed. It doesn't matter if his actions were just. What he did was heresy. Then, gripping his sword, Azedine says the knight isn't like the others in the church. The knight demands how Azedine dares to insult him, growing enraged. But the herald replies that, in fact, it was a compliment. The others are nothing but scoundrels, forcibly exiled from their homes over inheritance disputes. Then, the heretic asks if the holy knight can keep up with him. Leaving Zebeck bewildered, he says they will meet again, should fate allow it. In that instant, he vanishes into the shadows like a ghost. Only the fallen noble's body and the lone knight remain on the battlefield. No one had ever managed to eliminate Azedine from the Herald clan, and many had suffered permanent losses. The phrase, "scoundrels forcibly exiled from their homes over inheritance disputes," echoes in Knight Zebeck's mind, and he recognizes its truth. After all, the description also applied to him, leaving Zebeck speechless. He feels a weight lift from his chest and gazes at the rising sun. Meanwhile, citizens plead with the king for this year's tax exemption option. They beg, explaining that people are fleeing and becoming nomads, while others are dying of hunger, turning into living corpses. This leaves them subjugated by thieves and monsters, unable to pay their taxes. Margrave Kazel expresses his shame for them, stating that at this rate they'll be begging him for rations. They apologize, saying they are at the very limits of their lives. Kazel replies that nothing will change the fact that they are commoners, but if they wish, he can provide them relief. The commoners are thrilled by the offer and ask if he's serious. Kazel confirms, but lays down a condition. Fail to fulfill his request, and they'll face the gallows. A buzz erupts among them, then a crimson flame bursts from Kazel's hand. He tells them not to fear, for his demand is merely a single page. A grimoire materializes, and he declares, "This is my nature." The commoners confess their ignorance of magic, admitting they know nothing of grimoires. Even ignoramuses like you should be able to find it. If you truly desire it, the object will answer your call and reveal itself. Bring me a grimoire like this one, and your village will be exempt from taxes for 3 years. On top of that, 50 sacks of wheat, barley, and oats will be granted. The commoners are utterly stunned. They ask if they don't even need to know the grimoire's name to search for it. Then, Margrave Kazel reveals it's a copy of the Divine King's book, striking fear into their hearts. Suddenly, a serpent slithers from beneath his kilt and transforms into a woman. She senses that mentioning the Divine King's book by name was rather careless. Everyone is searching for that grimoire. Rumors are spreading across the entire continent. It would be wise to find at least a single page of it as soon as possible. Kazel demands, "What does the babbling witch want?" The witch is forced to reveal that her son, Kozel, has fallen victim. He denies it, asserting that his forces wouldn't fall so easily, especially with Zebeck present. However, the witch retorts that they face someone from the Herald's clan. Hearing the word herald, the Margrave's gaze turns morbid. They seek the Divine King's book to free themselves from the curses of their duties. He asks if Kozel died, and she replies that he lost his sight and his reproductive organs were removed. The Margrave orders soldiers dispatched to the surrounding areas to eliminate the Herald's clan. Then, the witch says she'll contact the commander and shakes his hand. "In that case, I'll have someone else do it. If my son was castrated, I'll just have to make another." With a seductive grip, the serpent woman insinuates something malicious. Meanwhile, Azedine treks through a desert, feeling he's about to succumb to thirst. He demands of his owl, "Why did you make such a spectacle, claiming we'd arrive in 2 days? And why did you dare speak so impertinently to the Emperor's mouth?" The owl, however, offers no reply to its master. Because of the Emperor, heralds are scorned worldwide, branded as killers of saints, soulless heretics. And because of the scene with the contractors, he abandoned his baggage and rushed here at top speed. Now he's parched, on the verge of death, all thanks to his stupid owl. The owl apologizes, promising that its servant will soon act. Just then, he hears rustling from a nearby bush. The heretic readies his weapon, wondering if they are ghosts. Blue fire begins to emanate, and he realizes it's coming from bodies hanging in the trees. The ghosts of these people appear before him, bowing and thanking him. Azedine declares he has avenged their grievances, and they may now pass into the afterlife. The spirits of the couple, his contractors, point to a well nearby. He instantly realizes they led him to water. He approaches the well, pulls the rope to retrieve the bucket, eager for a drink. But as he grabs the bucket, he spots something strange, a page from the Divine King's grimoire. The Herald clan was originally a race known as the Aragasa. They crossed a massive typhoon from another continent and landed in Wybris. The 8 Divine Kings of the Yaigas family ruled Wybris, each holding a throne. Yet, throughout this era, one person monopolized all 8 thrones. The other 7 sacred kings, his own brothers, were subjugated by Emperor Yaislat. The emperor sought to eliminate all remnants of the vanquished sacred kings. Meanwhile, the Aragasa, being foreigners, needed a place to settle. Yaislat offered them the grimoire Song of the Yellow Bird and a spirit called the Emperor's Voice. In return, these foreigners signed a contract with the emperor, becoming his heralds. Thus, the Aragasa's hands were unjustly stained with the blood of God. A herald became the emperor's sword, agent, and executioner. He executed wicked nobles who defied the emperor's laws. For Wybris, a land that believed in the afterlife and the cycle of eternal life, this was the most heinous transgression imaginable. Consequently, Emperor Yaislat died, and the empire fractured back into 8 kingdoms. The Aragasa became despised, and the heralds crumbled, branded as soulless. They faced an unexpected problem. The contract with the Emperor was still active. Even after his death, they were bound to serve as the Emperor's heralds forever. Azedine finds a page from the Divine King's book, the very source of the Emperor's power. He thanks the spirits, telling them they can finally rest in peace. If he can collect these pages, he believes he can escape the curse of duty. The owl chimes in, "It's rude to call it a curse. It's an honorable duty, born from a contract." It continues, "The fact that this fell into your hands is strange. Fate isn't playing games." The owl notes he doesn't seem happy, even though this is what all heralds desire. The first step, fulfill the service contract duties and collect 100,000 coins. Next, he must acquire the Divine King's book. If he succeeds, he will escape the curse of duty. Azedine acknowledges this is every herald's ultimate goal. However, he fears this knowledge will spread across the world. His father was the reason the Divine King's book was divided in the first place. Meanwhile, the herald feels intense thirst as he treks through the desert. From a distance, a blonde woman watches him, hidden. She recognizes him as the clan's traitorous son, sneering that he has no talent, no power, just an idiot. She wonders if he truly can't use magic, if he's cursed. Her friend isn't sure about the curse, but confirms he definitely doesn't use magic. The blonde heard he couldn't even string a bow and wet the bed until he was 8. She doubts he's capable of fulfilling the duties of other heralds. Her friend advises her to leave, saying it's not worth confronting a relative of a low-ranking contractor. Midium, however, decides to test his abilities. Her friend warns that a worker cannot attack a herald. She shrugs it off. "I don't care. If I win, the position is mine, and there's no way I can lose." Her friend cautions that he's a student of the temperamental elder Kazas, which might surprise them. Midium scoffs. Even if an idiot trains for 10 or 100 years with Kazas, he won't get strong. She finds it curious that a traitor's son can't use magic yet is a herald. She believes he's just taking up space, and competent people like her are being denied the herald title. Determined to usurp his position, she aims an arrow straight at him. With Azedine in her sights, the girl unleashes her arrow. His back to the incoming projectile, the herald senses the attack. After firing, Midium hides, not waiting to see the outcome. But when she peeks out, she's utterly shocked by the sight. A rock flying back at her slams into her forehead, injuring the girl. Her friend gasps in shock as Azedine leaps onto the rock, positioning himself in front of both of them. Facing the girl, he demanded to know if she was the one who shot the arrow at him. Lying, the woman claimed it was just a greeting. She hadn't sensed his presence and wondered when he'd climbed onto the rock in front of her. She noticed he'd already collected the arrows she fired and placed them in his quiver. Azedine then asked for their names. She introduced herself as Midium of Ether and the boy as Ishmael. She explained they were assistants, sent to help him, but Azedine found it odd. "You came to help me by shooting arrows?" he scoffed. Midium replied that his quiver was empty, and she simply wanted to give him her arrows. "That's the best kind of assistance," she added. Azedine, however, suspected Midium was just bored in the sacred land and wanted to be his helper. He then told the children to go home. This infuriated Midium. She hated being called a child. She declared herself to be of the Ether bloodline and demanded more respect. The herald, however, stated that bloodlines meant nothing to his clan. If they wanted to work for him, they'd be his subordinates, plain and simple. Still, he couldn't just ignore that they'd shot arrows at him. He considered teaching them a harsh lesson, showing them the consequences of such actions outside the sacred land. Midium found him completely unlike the rumors. He certainly didn't seem like someone who suffered bullying. He demanded Midium apologize for her rudeness. If she wanted anything from him, she would show respect. He pressed, "Will you do it as a friend or as a member of the Aragasa clan?" Trapped, the girl apologized for her insolence to Herald Azedine, declaring she would do it as an Aragasa. Our hero accepted her apology, then warned her not to shoot anyone with her arrows again. He explained that outside the sacred land, weapons weren't toys to be wielded without lethal intent. He wasn't trying to be harsh, but he told them to return to the sacred land. Declaring he didn't need assistance, he then simply asked if they had any water. At that very moment, Midium of Ether challenged Azedine to a duel. Ishmael pleaded with her not to, warning that Azedine was a dangerous man. Unlike the rumors, she now recognized him as strong, intelligent, and proud, not some idiot. But she'd feel like a coward if she backed down just because he was powerful. Midium of Ether challenged Azedine, aiming to usurp his position as herald. Challenged to a duel, Azedine immediately thought Ariel had been a terrible influence on these kids. If she won, she'd seize his position. If he won, her life and everything she owned would be his. Ariel was one problem, but this girl underestimating him was another entirely. She should give up before it was too late. After all, Ariel was the only one who could truly defeat a herald. He knew his his reputation wasn't the best, but he hadn't earned this position for nothing. Midium then turned, paced out 100 steps, and formally challenged Azedine. The duel was instantly validated. The herald had accepted her challenge. The girl recognized the voice of the emperor, emanating from the owl. The emperor's voice was a spirit bound to every herald. With the emperor's voice as a witness, refusing her challenge was now impossible. This was bad, and the girl knew she had to win this duel now. Time passed. The two friends handed our hero a pouch of water. Ishmael wondered what was happening. The air was thick with tension. Azedine unleashed an archery technique that sacrificed precision for sheer firing speed. It was the extreme form of the Aragasa technique, and he used it to unleash a storm of arrows at the girl. She conjured a magical barrier to shield herself from his barrage, but there were too many arrows, all too fast. One of them grazed her. She'd thought he couldn't use magic, yet somehow he'd invoked the beauty of the yellow crane. He had clearly won the duel, now drinking water and resting. But how? At one point, she had charged him with her sword, dodging his attacks. Her prediction was spot on. She thought she'd land a decisive blow when he emerged from behind a rock. Yet, as she unleashed a spinning slash with her sword and struck his arm, the herald's body began to dissolve like a mirage. Ishmael warned Midium he was attacking from behind. Immediately, our hero unleashed a sword strike, and Midium conjured a magic shield just in time. However, the herald used his own arm to swat hers away, creating an opening. He wound up for a punch to a vulnerable spot on her stomach, declaring the fight over. Shocked, the girl took a powerful blow that sent her flying into a rock. Her friend, terrified, began to cry and scream her name. A traitor's kin had just defeated the daughter of a noble lineage. Her best friend found this unacceptable and charged at the herald, cursing him. The herald merely announced her fate was sealed, showing no reaction to Ishmael's words. Midium challenged the herald's position and lost. Now, her fate rested in Azedine's hands. Because of his interference in the duel, Ishmael would also become the herald's property, along with her. Both began to cry, furious at losing the duel. Midium, however, didn't take it well and tried to grab a dagger to end her own life. But the soulless heretic stopped her, flung the knife away, and revealed he'd expected such an act. Her best friend went to comfort her after she collapsed to her knees, weeping. Our heretic stated that having lost the duel, the woman had no right to die. "You can only leave this life when I leave it, or when I wish you gone." She had truly challenged him to a duel without knowing this, and he found her far too naive. He figured that was enough of a lesson, and for that reason, he would free them both. The friends were stunned to receive the herald's pardon. He decided to pretend this duel never happened, as it would be bad if it became part of their history. He then emphasized that he didn't need slaves and had already freed them, allowing them to return to the sacred land. The two friends followed the protagonist on his journey through the desert. Midium, insisting, said he had received a talented young woman as a slave and chose to free her in that manner. Azedine said that if she were as talented as Ariel, she wouldn't have lost the duel. She might do better marrying an older man instead of challenging him to a duel. He stressed that she shouldn't challenge anyone to a duel ever again. After all, if she wanted to eliminate someone, she should do it without proposing such a challenge. He spoke far more than expected, seeming to say all of it out of genuine concern. The girl said it was all very new to her, leaving her friends surprised by the comment. The service contract between the Emperor and the Aragasa clan provided each other with what they needed, and anyone who betrayed the contract would meet a terrible end. This contract was once a symbol of loyalty, a mark of honor. However, after the Emperor's death, it became a horrific curse. Even after his demise, the contract's effects remained intact, binding the Aragasa clan to eternal service as heralds of the Emperor. What seemed like an endless cycle of servitude finally began to show signs of breaking. After all, the clan had secured victory in the War of Succession and obtained a copy of the Divine King's book. However, a notorious traitor stole the book and fled. His name was Akra, the traitor. They chained him and forced him to return it, under penalty of the curse eliminating him. He was demanded to hand over the copy of the Divine King's book before suffering terrible pain. The clan threatened him with every possible method, but their hope vanished in the end. Akri had scattered the book across the world's Heart Mountain range and ripped out its pages. He then became the first person to be eliminated because of the contract's curse. Because of the curse, he gave birth to two twins, despite being a man. These were Azedine and Ariel, the twin brothers, sons of the traitor. Between the two, Ariel became the strongest herald in the clan's history, while Azedine became known as the weakest, most idiotic herald. Midium wondered who spread such an absurd rumor. He clearly stated he had no intention of taking them with him and asked them not not to follow him. The girl claimed they weren't following him, but had something to deliver. It was a letter from the regional chief of Salasma, an old man who held no sympathy for the heretic. In the letter, he stated he would ignore the reprimand about the lost reports and asked the herald to retrieve the scattered copies of the Divine King's book, as it would reflect on his evaluation. Judging by what was written, the other heralds must be aware of the copy. He stated that copies of the book had recently appeared and asked the girl if she knew about it. She and her friend said they knew, and the girl revealed that his father betrayed the clan. At that moment, Ishmael was shocked by what she said and stomped on her foot to silence her. The herald asked them to stop, as it was already obvious they both knew about his origin. For now, he would have to go to Salasma to meet the regional chief. He thanked them for delivering the letter. Since they were heading in the same direction, he asked them to follow him and tell him what was happening there. Our hero said that since this road wasn't his, they could follow him if they wished. The girl was overjoyed that he accepted the request and began to follow him, eyes sparkling. They stopped for the night on the road with their mounts. Suddenly, our hero tells the other two to wake up and keep moving. Still exhausted, they spot a nearby spring and head towards the flowing water, until someone shouts, grabbing the group's attention, and declares they can't take water from their spring. Our protagonist states he has no intention of fighting and asks what they want in return. The swordsman replies that he wants all of them. Azedine asks if there's no chance for negotiation. The bandits think he has too much to say for an adult and question why he wears a mask. Then, their leader orders them to capture the girl and eliminate the other two. In a flash, all the bandits are on the ground, begging for their lives. They claim to be innocent people, and Ishmael asks, "Aren't you bandits?" They explain they were recruited, forced by Kazal's children, who are hiring many to hunt for copies of a book. "How are we supposed to find something we don't even know, just wandering aimlessly?" they ask. Luckily, they stumbled upon someone as noble as the protagonist. The girl suspects they might just be bandits making excuses. Azedine, however, doubts it, noting that this road is always frequented by travelers and merchants. Midium believes they'll have to eliminate these people to silence them and draws her dagger. Our hero tells her to calm down, stating he doesn't eliminate people without reason. She argues that even if they're good people, there's a chance they'll expose their tracks if left alive. Azedine believes they shouldn't eliminate them for convenience, as everyone deserves a second chance. The bandits insist that human lives are important and praise his nobility. They start flattering him, saying he'll be blessed for his mercy. To their surprise, our hero orders them to shut up right then. The bandits hadn't expected to see someone from the Herald clan there. One of them then notices that a clean punch had shattered one of their comrades' eyes. At that moment, he delivers a powerful punch to the face of the bandit who ambushed him. He warns them not to move, or their faces will explode. The bandits are shocked. He had promised to spare them. Our protagonist clarifies he will spare them, but only after inflicting permanent damage, ensuring they can't harm others, even if they don't regret their actions now. His two companions agree with this approach. Meanwhile, from a treetop, the owl watches him inflict permanent damage on the gang. Finally, they limp away, in great pain, struggling to walk and seething with anger at the herald, vowing revenge if they ever meet him again. But at that very moment, a giant orc-like monster easily eliminated one of the bandits. The monster crushed the man like a toy and shattered him into pieces. Next, it grabbed another, treating him like an object and calling him food. After devouring one, it snatched the others, declaring they'd be its meal for later. Besides the orc, armed goblins walked alongside the giant monster. Grabbing one of them in its hand, the orc declared it belonged to him and stashed it in a basket on its back. Meanwhile, the goblins feasted on the other humans. The monstrous giant orc spotted a human village with a large, sturdy fortress. It began heading that way, knowing there would be plenty of meat for him and his monster horde. The group continued their journey down the road, mounted on their animals. At first, the herald thought he was going easy and was surprised by Azedine's attitude. Midium didn't think the strategy was bad, at least until they recovered all the weapons. The herald found it hard to understand others without having been in their shoes. Losing an eye brought consequences greater than anyone could imagine. Those who once terrorized others with their attacks now found themselves living a nightmare. It was a good opportunity for them to redeem themselves for their wicked actions. Ishmael understood that the heretic had given them a chance at redemption. He spared their lives and offered them a chance to purify their own souls. However, that conversation was gnawing at our protagonist. He'd overheard that Margrave Kazal was hunting for a copy of the Divine King's book. Ishmael explained that Kazal had lost his succession and might want the book and its magic to climb the ranks. A political figure desperate for power was dangerous in the heretic's eyes. Our hero would have to remove his mask, which revealed him as a herald. They needed to be careful until they were out of Margrave Kazal's territory. The moment he removed his mask, his two friends stared in utter shock, jaws dropped. They saw he had no eyes. He quickly disguised himself, pulling clothes over his own. They asked how he managed to do things without any difficulty, even without eyes. Azedine didn't know either. He'd been able to see without seeing since birth. He noticed the girl wanted to say something but couldn't. He urged her to speak. She said he'd look better if she imagined he'd been injured, which annoyed him. She thought he looked handsome, but that after an accident, he'd lost his eyes. That's why she was sure it was better to have those scars and a handsome face than horrible eyes. Her friend warned her that Midium was being incredibly rude. Our hero revealed that the person who caused his injury had said the exact same thing. When asked who it was, he told them it was Ariel, his sister. She'd said it was strange for him not to have what should be there, and that at least she could imagine something was there if he had a scar. So she cut his face, claiming he'd look better that way. Because of that, he'd always pretended to be blind and had no problems when he was alone. Midium asked if they needed to pretend he was blind too, and he said it wasn't necessary. Reaching the end of the road, they found the fortress the orc was heading towards. They could see the gates, but the line to enter was massive. This was the village where the Imperial Road began, a perfect starting point for their journey. Our protagonist pretended to be a solitary pilgrim, with the two youths accompanying him. When he declared himself the Eyes of Paladin, Ishmael was stunned. One of the guards asked if things weren't the way the man remembered from his last visit. Then, they stripped the man of his clothes and began seizing his belongings. Midium thought it was practically robbery, and Ishmael mused that things hadn't been this bad before. Our protagonist realized they were searching for something specific among the commoners' belongings. Someone asked if he couldn't see, and Azedine replied, no. The protagonist claimed the two orphans were helping him on his pilgrimage. Seizing the opportunity, he asked an old man what was happening. The old man spoke of rumors circulating about copies of the Divine King's book. These rumors claimed a herald had made copies after stealing the book, and now they were reappearing. Margrave Castle's wretched men were hunting for those pages right now. 3 white-haired men were behind all this chaos. Our heretic realized there were 2 more losers, just like Castle. He knew this wasn't good. Dealing with this whole situation would be complicated. One person screamed at a guard, pleading that he needed that money to feed his family, asking why they were taking his cash if they were looking for the Divine King's book. At that moment, the soldier punched the commoner, forcing him to release his arm. As he hit the ground, the soldiers sneered that a grimoire could come in all shapes and sizes, and that money could be a grimoire in disguise. They'd take a look and return it if it wasn't the book. His daughter stepped forward, declaring it was robbery, and they should return her father's money. The soldiers told her it was ugly to talk back to adults and threatened to hit the little girl. Her father shielded her, ordering them to stop, as they were threatening a child with violence. The soldiers then told him to shut up and punched him in the stomach, leaving all the commoners outraged. While a guard ordered the father to teach his daughter manners, Midium was furious at the scene, but our hero remained calm. Next in line, they wondered what to do. The girl wanted to fight, but the protagonist told her to wait. A soldier was talking to another, and both looked surprised. A commotion erupted. People started slamming doors shut and grabbing items. Everyone wondered what was happening and why they were all leaving. Then, an announcement. An ogre had been spotted nearby. Our hero revealed he'd overheard the guard's conversation. He had excellent hearing. Just then, they noticed the soldiers had sealed the gates. The enraged commoners began demanding the guards open the gate so they could enter. Meanwhile, at the guards' military camp, Tarkv, Kazal's legitimate son, questioned if they were sure about sealing the gates. The soldiers were certain. They'd confirmed no copy of the king's book was there, so they decided to leave with what they'd gathered so far. When asked what to do, Tarkv ordered them to eliminate the ogre and any other monsters, claiming they'd trained enough to handle such threats. However, the soldiers had only trained with him for a single day, and one of them declared he would command the defense and pleaded for them to let the people in. Tarkv scoffed that he wasn't a knight and wouldn't be able to do anything. Yet, he was a knight fleeing, and that infuriated his subordinate. Still, he'd leave everything to the knight and now flee in his carriage. As he rode off in the carriage, the knight noticed the ground was trembling. All the commoners wondered where they would go if they'd be devoured by monsters. Terrified, they feared death by ogres and goblins. Looking aside, a commoner spotted a horde of goblins swarming the area. All the goblins and ogres were ravenously hungry, hunting for flesh. In the distance, a humble citizen watched the destruction unfold, growing desperate. Meanwhile, the team noticed the monsters closing in and prepared to face the situation. The citizens grab their torches and start marching down the road. A woman warns that the road will only get worse with time. She pleads with him to guide her younger sister and uncle, handing Ismael an extra lantern. He thanks the woman, promising to look after her uncle and sister. Azedine notices people react much better when he pretends to be blind. The knights and mercenaries were gone, but the village still needed protection. He urges those capable of fighting to stick together and stand fearlessly beside alongside the soldiers, accepting their support only if possible. The commoners were left to defend the village, while the elders and wounded could flee faster. The little girl's father declared he would protect her and fight for the village, but his daughter shot back that he couldn't even cut an apple properly, her voice laced with worry. She couldn't believe the knights, sworn to serve the people, were now expelling their own. This infuriated Midium, who found the situation disgusting and pathetic. She believed they were driving out the very people of Wybris they were meant to protect. Midium found it strange that an Aragasa would sympathize with the people of Wybris. The heretic claimed he didn't care, feeling the same way himself. Then, he told the group it was time to split up, grabbing his weapon and vanishing into thin air like a ghost. The other two, startled, yelled for him to wait. Meanwhile, the people of Wybris stood armed and waiting at the gate. One of them, trembling with fear, spoke to his captain, noticing hordes of monsters approaching. From the monstrous horde, a massive ogre introduced himself as Goldu. Invading the area, he shattered everything with his heavy steps. He also displayed the meat stored in his basket, demanding more. He boasted that they were clever ogres, skilled in investment. Noticing a large village teeming with humans, he concluded there was plenty of meat for him and his pack. The ogre leader then began to advance, crushing everything in his path with his heavy steps. The captain then ordered them to open fire, and the archers readied their attacks. Numerous archers unleashed a volley of arrows, soaring towards the monsters. Some struck goblins, but most didn't even graze the massive ogre. A goblin wearing a wolf skull on its head commanded its allies to breach the gates. The goblin swarm surged forward, intent on overwhelming the gates. The captain roared for everyone to defend the city gates and rain arrows down on the approaching monsters. However, many goblins used shields to deflect the arrow volleys. They sprinted at high speed, one of them snatching an axe. At that moment, the ogre seized a massive boulder, spun it on its axis, and hurled it at the city gate, shattering it almost completely. The citizens realized the monsters were on the verge of breaching the city. Desperate, they unleashed more arrows to halt the invasion. Cosette, the father who had been beaten earlier, gripped a bow and arrow. His friend urged him to flee as far as he could. Just then, the masked goblin with a staff hid behind a large rock, preparing a fire spell with his staff. As the spell materialized, he began to grin maliciously, thrilled that the staff had obeyed his command. This revelation made him realize that the Divine King's book was nearby. Interrupting the goblin, our protagonist arrived and stomped on the small creature's head. After the stomp, the giant ogre grabbed another boulder and hurled it, leaving Cosette and her friend utterly shocked by the massive destruction that followed. The ogre chief's throw caused immense damage. However, it didn't eliminate the two archers, as Azedine saved them with his incredible speed, whisking them to safety and declaring he would help defend the city gates. After the captain demanded his identity, the herald replied he was merely an emperor's messenger, just passing through. Everyone was stunned to realize he belonged to the soulless herald clan. At that moment, the protagonist leaped into action, firing arrows at the ogre, striking its single massive eye multiple times. The ogre roared in agony from the blows to its eye. Enraged, it attacked the protagonist wildly, intent on eliminating him and all the other villagers, consumed by its fury. The herald then leaped, landing squarely on the ogre's head, leaving it bewildered. This caused the ogre to stomp on its own goblin companions scattered on the ground. Our hero remarked that the ogre was moving surprisingly well. Capitalizing on the ogre's height and his vantage point atop its head, the protagonist unleashed a volley of arrows. From this superior position, he brought down numerous goblins with his relentless barrage. A villager questioned, "Are you truly a slayer of holy beings?" Glancing back, the protagonist spotted the bandits he'd freed earlier, now trapped inside the ogre's basket. The man whose eye Azedine had torn out was alive, his gaze burning with intense hatred. Just then, a goblin appeared, clad in strange clothes and wearing an animal skull on its head. It cackled maniacally, speaking of the Divine King's book. As it spoke of the book, something began to shift within its body, proclaiming it would be the King of Fangs. In that instant, the goblin began to morph into a monstrous, fleshy, colossal form, screaming again that it would be the King of Fangs as its body twisted and grew. Laughing incessantly, the herald wondered what monstrosity was emerging. Upon seeing the enormous red creature with razor-sharp teeth, he knew it would be a pain to deal with. The newly formed creature lunged forward aggressively. Our protagonist leaped from the ogre's head, leaving it disoriented. This left the ogre vulnerable, allowing the terrifying new monster to sink its teeth into it. Goldu roared in immense pain, crying out that he was wounded from the bite. Suddenly, the colossal ogre began to be devoured devoured by the red creature. The creature declared it enjoyed devouring, not being devoured. Moments after its declaration, the ogre was completely consumed and obliterated. Our protagonist watched it all unfold from a distance, as the creature turned its multiple faces to stare back. Cosette and Azedine recognized the monster, Godkin Kurt, the King of Fangs. Behind the newly emerged monster stood the goblin shaman, staff in hand. He then unleashed a spell from his wand. The spell flew true, striking our protagonist squarely in the chest. The protagonist was bewildered. He felt no apparent damage. The goblin shaman then commanded Yagis's servants to hand over the copy of the Divine King's book, promising that if they obeyed, he would eliminate them swiftly and painlessly. Before he could finish, the protagonist launched an arrow. The goblin saw the arrow hurtling towards him, but it missed. "How dare you!" he roared. Our hero wondered if the light from the staff was pointing to the book's copy. Just then, the King of Fangs conjured a weapon of flesh and lunged at the protagonist. Dodging the attack, he questioned why these monsters were after the book. He weaved through a barrage of attacks from the King of Fangs' weapon. Retreating, he suddenly saw a goblin whose head had melted into a purple goo, the aftermath of a godkin attack. The shaman goblin who summoned it snarled, calling the other goblins insolent. The red creature began to attack even its own goblins, decimating them. At that moment, the herald dodged everything with incredible speed, preparing his weapon. He charged towards Godkin Kurt, sword in hand. Reaching the monster, he unleashed a precise slash. Then, moving at blinding speed, he delivered several more cuts, tearing apart various sections of the King of Fangs with surprising ease. He declared the fangs were too large for the creature's body, and as they crashed to the ground, he noted their shallow roots and inherent weakness. From within the monster, the shaman goblin shrieked that he was the King of Fangs and ordered Azedine to shut up, but the protagonist shot back. "This monster is just a useless copy created by the original King of Fangs." He delivered one final powerful slash with his sword, obliterating the monster. However, a purple slime clung to his steel blade. He noticed that even steel melted from the monster's liquid. The enormous monster, still carrying the shaman goblin, roared that it would obliterate the herald. The protagonist thought he was at a disadvantage, doing all this for nothing in return. The guards yelled, "Fire!" and unleashed a volley of arrows at the King of Fangs. The arrows struck the monstrous flesh being and the goblin who created it. The soldiers decided to aid the herald clan member with their arrows, even knowing they'd face grave charges if the king's church discovered they'd helped a herald. Their captain roared that the king's church had abandoned them, furious at his soldiers for fearing punishment from those who had forsaken them. The cowardly Cosette declared he didn't want to die there and began firing arrows, claiming they were just attacking monsters, not necessarily helping the herald. He pretended he'd go after the herald clan member after they eliminated the creatures. The other soldiers agreed and also began attacking the monster, aiming at the creatures first with their arrows, only then thinking about the herald. Arrows flew, striking the King of Fangs and the other demonic beings. Azedine thought they should have given him the arrows. He'd resolved the situation. He knew he could launch his own attack now. He grabbed one of the godkin's fangs, hurled it, and struck the creature dead on, dealing massive damage. After throwing several fangs, he decided it was enough, seeing the devastation he'd caused. Finally, he launched another dozen, further damaging the King of Fangs' copy. Wounded himself, the shaman demanded, "How dare you attack like that?" Our protagonist replied he was just returning his fangs, and the shaman shouldn't be mad. The shaman goblin shrieked that he would become the ultimate King of Fangs, transforming into a superior being. Our hero found it amusing and hurled another fang at Godkin Kurt, declaring him a slayer of sanctities, and implying he'd eliminate a superior being. That last throw was brutal, shattering the false King of Fangs' flesh and obliterating the goblin shaman, whose head was severed by the blow. In his final seconds, the shaman realized the fight was truly over as the godkin began to fall. With the fight over, the soulless heretic was called out by the soldiers. Our protagonist found their interruption rude. A stray arrow could easily fly. Their leader demanded to know his intentions after eradicating the creatures. Others suspected he was responsible for summoning the monsters. They aimed their bows at him, finding it strange for creatures to appear out of nowhere, and accused him, believing the soulless heretic was to blame. He stared back, silent. One man declared that a swarm of monsters appearing from nowhere was strange. Even stranger, they thought, was a cursed heretic showing up in the fight. Our hero stated he also didn't know why they appeared, and that he had simply fulfilled his duty, as per the emperor's coin he'd received. Azedine lied, claiming one of them had used a coin to make a wish. The leader found it strange that someone would wish upon the gold coin demon. They began to argue amongst themselves, trying to discover who had made the wish to the herald, and a crisis of distrust settled in, questioning if one of them had truly made such a wish. Azedine claimed he had neither the authority nor the ability to reveal who did it. Then he asked if he could pass to the other side, and questioned if they would fight him in the name of the king's church, despite being attacked by the noble's bastard son and abandoned by their own church. An enraged archer protested against their faith being slandered. Mocking them, the herald called them all citizens of faith. Immediately after, he came across the mercenary he had spared earlier. The mercenary wondered if it was truly over. Our hero noticed he had survived and advised him to be kind, for he had received a second chance at life. The man began to weep, overcome with emotion at having survived. Our hero leaped forward at high speed, stopping in front of the guards. They, in turn, aimed arrows at him. However, their leader ordered them not to shoot the man. Azedine collected some of their arrows and placed them in his quiver. As he took the arrows, the group's leader thanked the herald for his help. Our hero replied that if the right person had heard the truth, he himself would have been executed. At that moment, he departed, using his superhuman speed. The owl, swooping beside him, noted he had lied about the gold coin. She knew that if he hadn't lied, the citizens would live in fear for having been involved with him. The owl asked if he held any resentment against them. After all, they treated him poorly even after he defeated the creature and saved everyone. Azedine knew humans were weak, and they had been kind to him when he pretended to be blind. Because of this, he decided to let it go, and stated he was very tired. It had been exhausting, and he had fought without earning any gold coins in return. In the distance, he saw the children, who were happy about his return. They were extremely impressed when he said he had defeated a copy of Kurt. Being modest, the heretic said the copy wasn't that strong. Ishamel said he had wasted his energy. After all, he hadn't earned any coins for the fight. Azedine had learned from Midium that it was beautiful to help and protect people, for life wasn't fun without aesthetics. Then, he put on his blind disguise. Midium said Ishamel was never the fun type. She realized they had managed to escape and asked if the evacuees had let them go. Midium said they were held at first, but then released when they mentioned defeating monsters. They were kind people who gave them a torch and didn't discover they were Aragasa. However, Midium thought she had escaped the situation because she was pretty. Azedine said she escaped because she was a child, not because of her looks. This annoyed the girl, and she argued that at 13, she could be a queen. Our hero showed Midium a magic wand and asked if she recognized it. Midium, from Ether, seemed to recognize the staff, as Kurt's copy used an identical one. The girl said she would concentrate to identify the staff. After all, she didn't possess mana at that moment. She was happy when Azedine recognized her as a subordinate. The herald was actually asking his companion for a favor, agreeing she'd inspect the item the next day. Suddenly, he leaped into a tree, and Midium asked where he was going. Our protagonist declared he was in a hurry and told them to follow. They didn't understand his rush, but they obeyed. Suddenly, several villagers were seen walking down a dirt road in the dead of night. A woman noticed the blind man, our hero, and asked when he'd arrived, mentioning the children had gone looking for him. He simply said he was lost and that the clever kids would find them. More importantly, he heard shouts of victory echoing from the village. He declared it would be fine to return now. His hearing was sharp, and he was sure of it. He asked if he could catch up later using lantern signals. Before he could get an answer, a citizen drew everyone's attention to something strange. The gate lanterns were blazing. The watchmen had actually succeeded in their mission. A villager suggested sending a small group to confirm, but then the blind man vanished. Our protagonist, clad in black, was already sprinting towards the gate, muttering that he was too lazy to wait and would fall asleep in seconds if he lay down now. Suddenly, he spotted smoke rising from a mountain and stopped dead in his tracks to investigate. It was a soldier's camp, a roaring bonfire illuminating the night. The soldiers grumbled about the Margrave, who was more concerned with finding some book than protecting the city from drought and ogres. They desperately wanted to do a good job, escape this place, and cover their skyrocketing taxes. Watching them, our protagonist figured the damn runaway must be nearby. He then noticed a wooden box in the distance, filled with banknotes. Remembering he was broke, his owl companion chirped, "You hit the jackpot! You need that cash! Travel costs a fortune!" When the general discovered their loot was gone, he exploded at his soldiers. They claimed they'd been ambushed, unable to react. The general rounded on a sitting soldier, declaring it was his fault. The scarred man, however, accepted the blame without a flicker of worry. The general threatened to cut 2 guards' salaries, but the scarred man simply shrugged. "I don't care." He knew it wasn't just a common thief. Some of his personal belongings were missing too. The white-haired man asked what he'd lost, but the scarred knight refused to say. Tarkv figured it wasn't important then, but the knight insisted the spy would head for the village and ordered Tarkv to send out a recruitment order. Tarkv countered that the nearest village was a public stage station ruled by a noble. "That'll be difficult," he argued. "Why are you asking me for this and giving orders?" The knight simply smirked. No problem. I'll just plunder that village in your name. Suddenly, he plunged a knife deep into Tarkiev's abdomen. Tarkiev gasped, utterly unprepared. The other guards watched in horrified shock as their captain was stabbed. The scarred man declared the knife was a witch's gift and began to emanate dark magic. A purple spider materialized on the hilt, then burrowed into the captain's body, vanishing from sight. The scarred man calmly stated, "You'll be fine for now." Tarkiev, reeling from shock, struggled to comprehend what the man had done with that cursed item. Then, the captain collapsed, writhing in agony. The scarred man looked down at him. "The spider only gave you one bite." He commanded Tarkiev to listen closely, or the spider would lay eggs inside him. "And when they hatch," he promised, "it'll be quite a show." Terrified of the chilling, scarred man, Tarkiev stammered, "What do you want?" The scarred man placed a hand on Tarkiev's shoulder. "I'll plunder that public stage station and capture the man who stole all my belongings." After that chilling encounter, the children were seen sleeping soundly on their mount, right in the middle of the road. The owl hooted, urging them to wake up. It was already 10 in the morning. They groggily stirred, noticing Azedine was already on his feet. "Have you always had 2 wands?" they asked. Azedine explained that while plundering the mercenaries' loot, he'd stumbled upon a wand identical to his own. It was the exact same one the goblin shaman had wielded in battle. When he asked the girl to examine it, she immediately suspected the staff might be cursed. Ishmael took the wand, focusing intently on its magical aura. When asked what he saw, he revealed a mental image of swirling green and black. If it belonged to the King of Fangs, the image would be red, he mused, pondering if the wand might belong to a different Kurt. Ishmael then explained that this staff's sole purpose was to seek out a specific target. It was designed to point to something, and it was fragile, prone to breaking easily. Despite its creator being of great caliber and crafting it in a hurry, its performance was surprisingly good. Azedine realizes the wand was made to locate the Divine King's book pages. He knows he'll have to face countless trackers from now on, so he decides to check on the men who lost the item. Returning to the camp, he notices something's wrong. The atmosphere has drastically shifted overnight. All the mercenaries are gearing up for a real battle. Azedine believes the goblin shaman's goal was also to collect the book's pages. He expected them to react after losing the wand, but instead, they resorted to brute force. Descending from the tree, Azedine warns his group that the mercenaries plan to attack the nearest village. The public stage station is larger than typical villages. Midium asks if there's a reason for their reckless desperation. Azedine doesn't explain, but insists there must be a reason. Using the wand to locate the book's copy, they stumble upon a massive castle. In the late afternoon, many people walk peacefully through the area. A guard allows a blind man into the public stage station. They let blind pilgrims enter for free, even if they're being deceived. The group finds the Coruscant Peddlers Association wagon. They feel like they can finally rest, but Azedine notices something strange amidst it all. In a memory, 3 men talk to a woman about her being the youngest herald. Other children called her a traitor's daughter. She earned the title of the clan's greatest genius, becoming a herald at 3 years old. That's how Ariel was known back then. In her youth, she had to learn the truth behind it all after a broken ankle. Ariel was far more than just a strong person. A blonde man recalled this, murmuring Ariel's name, until something jolted him awake. Not long ago, the Coruscant Peddlers Association, which started as a small merchant group, grew into a recognized major organization within Coruscant. It's actually one of the ghost organizations run by the Herald clan, made up of the Aragasa people. So, all the merchants in the association are Aragasa. Azedine wished they could be discreet that day, but the children drew attention. 3 men recognize him as Azedine, the 108th spirit who spent months pretending to be a herald. They notice he already has subordinates, even after only 3 months of faking being a herald. Azedine explains the children aren't his subordinates, and asks for help changing his mount's horseshoe. The man complies, and Azedine asks to trade an item for money, also requesting special arrows. The man questions, "Aren't you the one who became a herald on Elder Kaza's recommendation, even without basic training or procedures, and being a crybaby?" The man notices Azedine brought many expensive items and assumes he stole them all. The 2 children get a bad feeling about this. Midium wants to help Herald Azedine, regardless of his questionable origins. At that moment, the girl tosses a change of clothes into Azedine's hand. As he grabbed the clothes, Azedine told them to cut the jokes, warning he didn't want to hit them. The 2 believed he'd only become one of the 108 spirits by sheer luck, and they weren't about to bow down just because he was the big shot. Our hero suggested they settle their frustration in a duel. Then, he asked if they were afraid of the risks involved in a fight. Midium scoffed, saying they were certainly good at spouting nonsense. Azedine thought the girl shouldn't talk about duel risks. After all, she'd lost to him. The jerk retorted that the little girl was only saying that because the blind man couldn't even take a punch. Suddenly, the girl leaped, making the ground tremble, landing behind the man and pressing a knife to his throat. The man demanded to know what the little miss was doing, and she threatened him right there. She declared herself a descendant of Ether and warned him she wouldn't tolerate sarcastic remarks. She told him to prove with actions that he disliked the herald Azedine, challenging him to step forward. She continued, stating he'd been expelled from his duties and now looked down on heralds. Just then, guards began to approach, drawn by the commotion. A blond man with blue eyes remarked that things had gotten messy. This man recognized Azedine, noting it had been a long time since they last met. He then asked the girl's name, and she introduced herself as Midium of Ether. He introduced himself as Derek Savan and apologized on behalf of his friend, gently asking her to get off him, stating he didn't want his clanmate eliminated. Midium released him and returned to stand beside the herald and her best friend. The man who had been threatened was furious, his blood having been spilled. Derek ordered Pito and Kosarak to devote themselves to their duties, then invited Azedine to take a bath and join him for dinner to talk. Our protagonist didn't quite understand the man's request, but accepted it nonetheless. After a long time without bathing, the soulless heretic felt utterly refreshed. Ishmael asked why he'd been idle, and why Ariel was revered while he wasn't. He'd heard that those who challenged her or made comments were forced to pay a price. Azedine explained that Ariel had her own way of handling certain situations. Ishmael found our hero to be a strange individual. For that reason, he wanted to convince Midium to get away from him as soon as possible. Otherwise, more strange people like him would appear. After his bath, the protagonist went to dinner with Derek, and the meal looked delicious. Derek asked if he'd heard anything specific about Ariel, and the heretic replied, no. When asked if he cared about his sister, he said it wasn't necessary as she was strong. Derek found it unbelievable that Azedine had come all this way, just to attack the association members. Ignoring the comment, the protagonist reached for an apple, but the man stopped him. He insisted Azedine should start reporting his results now. Our soulless hero stated he was doing his job correctly and collecting gold coins. Derek pressed him about attacking other merchant associations and keeping them in check. Azedine brushed him off and showed the man a magic staff. He explained that the bishops of Kurt used it to find copies of the Divine King's book. Ether's daughter had delivered the regional chief's letter, which was why she'd been summoned. Derek said Azedine was the only one who didn't know, as he didn't send letters to the regional chief. His old friend thought the staff was a good contribution, but the book copy would be even better. Then, suddenly, the protagonist declared he had brought the copy, leaving his colleague in complete shock. Finally, he grabbed the apple and remarked that the other heralds had returned empty-handed. Derek seized the soulless heretic's hand and demanded he hand over the book copy. Everyone was gathered outside peacefully until a scream shattered the calm. From inside the cabin, the man roared Azedine's name, drawing everyone's attention. Stunned by the news he'd just received, Derek was speechless. He then asked if the herald didn't trust them, insisting they could protect the copy. However, Azedine, the heretic, believed it would be far more difficult for Derek to accomplish that task. Azedine warned that one of Kazel's bastards was on his way, flanked by his mercenaries. Among them were heretics loyal to Kurt. Derek, for his part, was confident he wouldn't lose to them. Despite their past defeat by Ariel, Derek, an ancient herald, trusted in his ability to triumph. But if mere merchants fought with such skill, it would spark rumors and expose his past. Yet, for the ancient herald, protecting the book's copy was now paramount. When Derek accused Azedine of being weaker than Ariel, Azedine retorted that was ancient history, claiming he was no match for her as a child. He had grown immensely stronger since those days, when he'd consistently lost duels to his sister. However, Ariel was the strongest warrior of their race, commanding countless followers. Azedine couldn't fathom her current strength, as years had passed since he last saw her. The heretic decided to deliver the copy personally to the regional chief. Derek found his arrogance infuriating, especially coming from his senior. Just then, someone burst into the tent, warning them of trouble at the eastern gates. Earlier, at the eastern gates of a postal city, knights spotted approaching riders, wondering if they were armed. One knight barked orders, "Too many of you, come back tomorrow." However, the group's leader, a white-haired bastard, declared Durand was doing a fine job and ordered a bag of money brought forth as a token of gratitude for his efforts. Tarkv, a knight, felt a knot in his gut. He was a knight, bound by duty. He tried to bluff. "If this goes south, we'll all end up as priests in the king's church." In that instant, the knight guarding the gates was cut down by the scar-faced mercenary. The brutal strike dropped the man instantly, leaving even the king's bastard stunned by the absurd scene. The bastard claimed he hadn't wanted the knight to die. The scar-faced mercenary then sneered at his young master. "You should be happy, lord. A raid isn't fun unless we get our hands dirty." Tarkv cursed the mercenary for complicating things. There were 3 gates to breach, but the scar-faced mercenary paid him no mind, gazing at his hand instead. His palm was riddled with holes, tiny spiders scuttling in and out. Then, with a chilling breath, he blew the spiders. They swarmed towards the guards, who screamed in terror. Their screams intensified as the arachnids burrowed into their skin, forming grotesque blisters and unleashing agonizing pain upon them all. Even the king's bastard recoiled in utter horror at the gruesome spectacle. To their surprise, the guards, infected by the spiders, felt immense power surge within them. Tarkv realized the mercenary was a curt heretic. The mercenary flashed an evil grin. After all, it took the bastard long enough to figure it out. He declared that he and the young master should work together, help each other. Once he got his hands on the divine king's book, the bastard could finally have his revenge. At that moment, the mercenary activated the spiders lurking inside the bastard's belly. The bastard collapsed, writhing in agony as the spiders began to move. He had little choice but to cooperate with the heretic mercenary. The guards, now under his spider spell, received their orders. No one was to leave the village from this moment on. Next, he commanded them to get the rat, and the guards sprinted off in a frenzy. The town's youth began to wonder what was happening, realizing the guards were blocking everyone from leaving the village. When they questioned it, the guards simply stated they wouldn't let anyone pass. The citizens retorted that they had no right to stop them. An enraged citizen yelled, "Get out of my way! I'm leaving!" calling them mercenaries. In that instant, the mercenary grabbed the citizen's face with terrifying ease, as if he were nothing. Lifting the innocent man into the air, he declared, "Neither you nor anyone else will leave this village." The mercenaries, now with glowing green enchanted eyes, murmured that something strange was happening. A sudden hunger gripped them, and they began to salivate. One of them opened his mouth, which stretched wide, becoming enormous and spider-like, preparing to devour the innocent man. Just as he was about to swallow the citizen with his arachnid maw, something stopped him. An arrow flew towards the monster, striking its face brutally. The impact halted its attack, forcing it to release the innocent man. Then, the protagonist appeared, delivering a sword strike to the monster's head, knocking it to the ground and saving the innocent man for good. On the herald's sword blade, tiny spiders began to crawl. Then, the soulless heretic realized they were subordinates of Queen Arthra, the Spider Queen. Before all this unfolded, we're taken back to a moment in the past. Midium said he'd keep needing them and should recruit them permanently. The owl warned Azedine about a new contract. When Azedine asked where the person was, the owl replied, "She's to the west, and she just stopped breathing." The heretic grew worried and ordered the two to prepare fire. They were heading to the western gates. He took a massive leap to reach the location faster. The two grumbled that he was giving orders without even thinking. Still, they decided to prepare and grabbed a torch. The herald used this torch to attack the monsters infected by the Spider Queen, setting the creatures ablaze, easily eliminating them with fire. Our hero seemed a bit weary from the fight and ordered them to burn the others too. He asked the two about food and water, and they said they'd brought everything they could. Ismael asked if they should bring the goats too, but Midium cut him off, seeking the herald's approval, wanting to know if they'd been useful. Meanwhile, the villagers began to rush towards the protagonist, who had just eliminated the monster with his spear. Midium shouted, asking if the herald had defeated the monsters. However, he replied that it was just the beginning and told them to enter the tent for food. Midium then asked if he knew how many people were starving right now. Suddenly, the girl screams as the monster rises behind him. Deciding to try something new, he conjures a type of magic in his hands. He slams his palm into the monster's belly. The blow is massive, sending the creature reeling. As the creature crashes to the ground, shedding countless spiders, the protagonist draws his sword, charging the monster. Its appearance grows increasingly arachnid, with a spider's maw, multiple eyes, and insect fangs. The creature lunges with its fangs, but our hero dodges, sprinting away. The herald finds it strange that the creature never seems to be defeated, even after countless blows. The being should have been knocked out long ago, considering the palm strike and sword slashes he'd delivered, not to mention the incessant mutations the creature undergoes. Its arachnid features are rapidly intensifying, making it look more and more like a spider. At this rate, he won't reach the new contractor's location. So he aggressively hurls his spear, aiming to end the fight, and unleashes a blue lightning bolt, electrocuting the monster. A magic magical lightning arrow fired by Midium obliterated the creature. The girl knew lightning would be effective, as the monster's weakness was fire. However, after using her magic, she grew weak, and Ishmael helped her stay on her feet. The heretic admitted she was skilled, indeed a member of the Ether clan. That said, he warned her that the beauty of nature was a grimoire itself, and advised her not to use such power too often. Ishmael knew Midiam was trying hard just to be accepted by the herald. When asked if the contractor had already been eliminated, the heretic affirmed it. When questioned why he was doing all this, the heretic stated he would fulfill the contract. Even if the contractor had been eliminated, he couldn't leave without verifying the information. Ishmael said he couldn't go without checking, and the heretic replied, "That's why I'll eliminate their leader." At the western gates, fire raged from the battle against the spiders. Several innocent men lay on the ground, cut down by mercenaries. The mercenary with the eye scar reveled in the scene, and Tarkv asked if everything was all right, questioning the mercenary's search for the book of scriptures and his brutal methods. The mercenary replied, "It's different from what I expected, but everything's going well." The bastard was shocked by the mercenary's casual dismissal of the catastrophic situation, saying, "At this rate, the thief will escape." Meanwhile, the spider-infected men feasted on humans. One of them drew a triangle and tossed a gold coin, aiming to forge a contract with the herald. The mercenary saw the triangle on the ground and knew it was a summons for the gold coin demon. Then, he remembered this was about the herald clan. He knew this clan was also hunting for the scriptures of the divine king's book. He figured the rat who stole his things might be part of the herald clan. The bastard asked if the mercenary intended to fight them, but the mercenary figured they'd come to him anyway. After the mercenary stated the heretic would appear due to the contract, Tarkv nearly took an arrow to the head. The arrow almost struck the mercenary's head, but he caught it mid-air. He then snapped the arrow with his fingers, his eyes glowing green from a spell. However, another arrow flew, grazing the mercenary's face. He realized the attacker had intentionally weakened the first arrow, setting him up for the second lethal shot. Just then, 6 spider legs burst from the scarred mercenary's torso. A grin spread across his face as he declared, "That strike was intriguing." At that moment, the Emperor's herald charged, ready to press the attack. The herald slashed at the mercenary's gut, landing a hit even as he leapt back. Our hero, seeing the spider legs, remarked that the mercenary was intriguing himself. A fierce battle erupted between them, blows raining down from both sides. Yet, the enemy was taking the brunt of it, absorbing multiple sword strikes from the soulless heretic. Despite his instincts screaming to dodge, the mercenary recognized the attack as a calculated move. The enemy sensed that things would turn out well for him, no matter who won the fight. Our protagonist surged forward, landing another blow, remaining untouched so far. Meanwhile, the king's bastard son remained on his knees, longing for his mother. The herald then unleashed a massive sword strike, severing the mercenary's spider legs. He wondered if the mercenary was the leader, deeming him powerful for remaining rational even as a monster. The mercenary conceded that the herald was strong, saying he'd expect nothing less from an emperor's herald. But then, the mercenary's wounds began to regenerate, a sickening sight. He declared he couldn't be defeated. From the very spots he was struck, more spider legs erupted. Our hero questioned if that was truly the case, scoffing that he was just a spider in the end. Facing his foe, our hero tried to land another strike, but the arachnid recoiled. Enraged by the heretic, the mercenary swatted him away with one of his powerful legs. The heretic then channeled the beauty of nature, manifesting as the elder Kazas. He quipped, "Spiders can't scratch their own backs." Then, he appeared behind the mercenary, preparing a lethal strike to his back. He delivered a brutal slash, severing the enemy's head from its body, leaving the bastard Tarkv utterly stunned. The bastard then declared that as a herald, he couldn't be eliminated, ordering the protagonist to calm down. Our hero didn't care if he was a noble or not, but the white-haired herald wouldn't have used such a flimsy argument. At that moment, the bastard pulled out a gold coin from the emperor. When asked where he got it, the spoiled brat claimed his mother gave it to him. According to his mother, the herald clan could be manipulated with gold coins. Even with the coin, if he didn't make a wish, the bastard could still be eliminated by our hero. Immediately, the bastard tossed the coin into the center of the triangle and made a plea. His request, to be saved, as the final area was overrun by spider monsters. At that moment, the soulless heretic accepted the bastard's contract. He asked the owl if they should accept this piece of trash as a contractor. The bastard then began to cry, telling his mother he was alive. Just then, his 2 companions arrived, worried sick about him. They were furious when they learned the bastard had made a request to the protagonist. The protagonist asked Midium if she could use her blue lightning again, a bit weaker this time. Midium replied that since she was of his race, she could help, help. She started to say she wasn't his subordinate, then asked if he'd be asking for help with contracts too. Faced with a barrage of questions, the protagonist declared he would accept the girl as his subordinate. The girl beamed, thanked him, and promised to give her best on the mission. Ishmael had never seen Midium so desperate for someone's attention like this. No matter what Ishmael did, she never paid him this much mind. Thinking that Azedine commanded so much of her attention, Ishmael felt a deep sense of injustice. The boy slumped to the ground, dejected, and the herald asked if he was hungry. Midium asked if they could start now, threatening to beat up the bastard who was clearly weak. The bastard stammered, "Why ask that? Is it real lightning? Is there a chance I'll die?" Then, the girl began to summon blue lightning, a sadistic smile playing on her lips. The blue lightning magic surged forth, electrocuting the bastard Tarkv. The protagonist asked if the bastard was all right, noting he'd made the girl overexert herself. Midium replied she'd be fine with some rest. After all, Ether's daughter wasn't that weak. Meanwhile, Tarkv collapsed to the ground after the electrocution, feeling utterly drained. His body trembled and he glared angrily at his tormentors, wondering why they were staring at him like that. The protagonist warned him not to try anything reckless, which the bastard took as a grave insult. Ishmael threatened to eliminate him, stating their job was done. The herald told him not to say that, but the boy questioned if the contract had truly been fulfilled. However, Azedine declared no, because the Emperor's voice had accepted the bastard's plea. This meant he had received an individual protection value. Once they became contractors, they had to treat him well, even after the mission was complete. Furthermore, the Emperor's voice gained vital energy from the contractors. Our hero wants to get rid of the remaining spider mercenaries in the village, but if he mentions it, the kids will pester him to come along. Just then, the villagers erupt in cheers as the King's Church Knights arrive. The herald figures they'll handle the spiders and feels a wave of relief. Tarkv practically begs the soulless heretic to take him on this mission. He knows once the church's investigation begins, he's doomed. He needs help reaching a place free from holy knights. Our protagonist finally agrees. After all, he has to treat him with sincerity now that their contract is sealed. Later, the bastard demands entry, needing a place to stay. A villager couple is startled by the man's presence. He's a knight. When they ask why he's there, the bastard almost spills that he's a noble, but the trio cuts him off before he can finish. Our hero, disguised as a knight, tells the couple they need a place to sleep. He offers a silver coin to sleep in their barn. They accept, saying it's fine since they need to work on the farm anyway. Tarkv can't fathom why they stopped him from speaking. He thinks these settlers are nothing but lazy. He argues they always demand too much and flee at the first sign of a drought. In his mind, that's precisely why the poor stay poor. With a sneer, the protagonist says there's a reason a noble like him is stuck with a heretic. He dismisses it, simply telling the bastard to think before he speaks. They tie up the goats and head upstairs to sleep. When Tarkv complains about flies, the herald retorts that having spiders in your belly is worse. The noble refuses to sleep in such a squalid place. Midium asks Azedine about the king's church. The people seemed both happy and terrified when the holy knights arrived. Our protagonist explains that these knights uphold the laws of the 8 kings. They learn white magic, protect the people, and are handsomely rewarded. But in truth, the church is packed with nobles who steal far more than they protect. Spotting the very noble Azedine was just bad-mouthing, the group decides to rest as well. The next day, deep in the forest near Azedine and his group's resting spot, the imposing holy knights march on. One of them asks Gardreg how much longer they'll keep marching. Their leader tells him to calm down. They want to finish this quickly, too. The knights expected to eliminate monsters, but they've all vanished. Just as he suggests heading back and pretending they fought the monsters, a sound cuts through the air. One knight tells another, "Your daughter's a real beauty." They start joking around, a relaxed atmosphere settling over the forest. Gardreg snaps at them to stop the nonsense and find the monsters. Suddenly, a bizarre growl echoes and fear grips them. When their leader collapses to the ground, the knights ask if he's all right. They hear a bizarre sound and look behind the bushes, encountering a red-eyed wyvern. Overwhelming fear grips everyone as the creature stares down the holy knights. In shock, they draw their bows, attempting to fire arrows at the monster. Gardreg tries to stop their impulsive action, but his men ignore him and shoot the wyvern, which doesn't even flinch. Enraged, the wyvern takes flight, swooping away and leaving them stunned as it vanishes into the sky, far from the church knights. The chief knight realizes it was a young wyvern and concludes that the adults must be nearby. Continuing down the dirt road, they find a farm. Gardreg is stunned by the sight of a wounded man in his wife's arms. Surprisingly and suddenly, he orders his men to eliminate them both, convinced they summoned the wyvern and are therefore heretics. He declares there's no other option if they want to avoid greater punishment. The woman, in tears, is terrified as she sees the knights approaching. Her eyes turn black with yellow pupils, moments before the soldiers strike. Swords drawn, the knights are about to execute the couple. As all this unfolds, the Emperor's voice awakens our hero, who grumbles that it hasn't even been 2 hours since he fell asleep. The owl announces that duty calls Spirit 108, Azedine. Only those who answer the call of justice deserve to be heralds. Our hero remarks to the owl that few act that way. Suddenly, someone bursts into the barn, screaming desperately. Our hero leaps with agility, appearing before the child to ask what happened. The small child, in tears, recounts that his father was eliminated by the knights. Azedine observes the horrific scene of lifeless bodies on the ground. The knights are coldly executing citizens. Their chief asks if they found the boy. However, another soldier reports that the little boy is gone. They believe he should have accepted his fate and died with his parents, because now he's making things difficult. They comment that it's the only way. After all, anyone who eliminates an innocent citizen must be executed. A knight might be pardoned, but considering the kind of person Bishop Salasma is, it's unclear if he'll accept, even if the person repents their sins. Furthermore, it's rare for any knight to return from a penance mission. Most become thieves or end up dying in the streets. He can't afford to hesitate now, or Maya's funeral will be in vain. Gardreg grew up facing countless hardships because he was born a bastard. That's why he knows he must act decisively, as a father would for his child. He orders them to find and eliminate more people who must be hiding there, as it's a small village where people likely don't even know what happened. They spot a woman fleeing, and the guards go on high alert, ready to pursue her. One of them points a spear and asks, "Where do you think you're going?" He hurls the spear with force, striking the fleeing woman in the foot. She collapses, immobilized. The knight who threw the spear claims his hand slipped because of tomato sauce. He tells the woman to make things easy and not resist the attack. However, at that exact moment, the knight takes a rock to the face, collapsing unconscious to the ground and leaving the woman and his comrades in shock. They wonder what just happened. Gardreg blocks an attack with his sword, demanding to know his assailant's identity. Our hero emerges, explaining his body is failing him due to severe sleep deprivation. The knights, enraged, take his words as a challenge and prepare for a fight. Azedine leaps and spins through the air, dodging the soldiers' attacks. Their spears have a long reach, and Azedine is unarmed. So he snatches up stones, aiming to disarm them. Using the beauty of nature technique in Kaza mode, he hurls a stone at one of the guards. The soldiers mock him, claiming stones won't touch them, let alone knock them down. Our hero unleashes the yellow crane ability, and the hurled stone abruptly reverses, soaring back. The moment it returns, the stone smashes into the soldier's head, gashing him. Then Azedine lands a powerful kick to the guard's gut, sending him crashing to the ground. As the man falls, Azedine seizes his spear. As Azedine prepares to engage the guard again, a shout interrupts the scene. Gardreg orders them to stop and asks if the man knows who they are. He states they are holy knights of the king's church. Gardreg demands to know why they're slaughtering the innocents of Wibris. The man retorts, "They are heretics." The Emperor's herald challenges, "What proof do you have for such actions? How could a couple of hard-working farmers be heretics?" The leader sneers, "We, the knights, know who the heretics are. No one dares doubt us." Drawing his sword, he immediately brands our protagonist a heretic as well. His sword flares with divine light, growing impossibly large. Our hero warns the woman to shut her eyes, lest she be blinded by the searing light. He recognizes the technique, the same one that Bastard used to blind before striking. Our hero shields the innocent woman, his hand covering her eyes to block the blinding flash. The holy knight then charges, sword raised, straight for Azedine. Just as he's about to unleash a devastating strike on our hero, an arrow pierces his gut. The arrows, however, fail to wound the holy knight. They were fired by the Emperor's herald's 2 subordinates. Concerned, they ask if Azedine's eyes are all right. Lacking eyes, Azedine cannot precisely answer that question. Meanwhile, 2 more holy knights charged, but the subordinates managed to hold them back. When Midium says they didn't kill them, our hero replies that they did well. Gardreg observes that the child defeated 2 apprentice knights and wields a powerful bow. Realizing they belong to the herald's clan, he questions their loyalty to the Emperor. The knight leader concludes that the farmers were heretics because of this. Azedine realizes they've been indiscriminately slaughtering people, blind to the truth. He knows, from the size of the spear, they came to hunt, not to execute. They accidentally killed someone while gathering herbs in the forest and panicked. The entire massacre, then, was a desperate attempt to silence witnesses to their reckless blunder. Hearing all this, the Holy Knight seethes with rage and snarls, "Silence, heretic!" Our hero demands they compensate the village and swear an oath to become penitent knights. Disobey him, and he threatens annihilation, but the knight shows no sign of backing down. After all, he now sees Azedine as a high-ranking herald. Grabbing his sword, he starts to conjure powerful magic. He knows that if they capture him, it's all over. He conjures a magic hammer, radiating an intense yellow light. Our protagonist is pleased. He looks like someone of high standing. Gardreg stares at the protagonist, deadly serious, blade in hand. Finally, he unleashes the attack with the giant magic hammer. The Holy Knight charges the heretic, who before being struck, hurls the spear he'd taken from the guard. The spear collides with the massive magic hammer, but it's useless against it, shattering like paper. This leaves the Holy Knight stunned, and his companions start to flee, escaping the imminent attack. As she runs, Midium glances at the Holy Knight's quiver and announces she's borrowing it. At that moment, the herald, with his incredible dexterity, dodges 2 consecutive hammer blows. Watching the attack smash into the ground, destroying everything nearby, the herald notes his opponent's immense brute force. After dodging, he positions himself at a more strategic point and observes the attacks. Then, he knocks 2 arrows, draws his bow, and aims at the enemy. He fires the arrows at the exact moment the magic hammer is about to collide with him. Midium, worried, asks, "What are you doing?" The Holy Knight scoffs at the herald. The arrows can't even touch him. Then, the knight lunges at the herald, sword drawn, preparing a swift, lethal strike. He grins at the Emperor's herald moments before delivering a sword strike. However, when he finally swings his sword, he hits only the ground. The herald is gone. This leaves him bewildered, wondering where the herald could have vanished. Our hero takes a massive leap, landing behind the Holy Knight. As soon as he lands, he grabs an arrow and fires it as fast as he can. An arrow strikes the leader's head, seemingly fatal. The event shocks everyone, even the herald himself. When Midium questions him about the nature of that action, the arrow flies from the enemy's fallen body directly into the soulless heretic's hand. Azedine explains, it's a technique called arrow return. The sun shines, marking the end of the deadly combat between the two. Our hero, Azedine, places the bodies of the fallen villagers on a bed of hay. A daughter sees her father's lifeless body and begins to cry, sobbing. Another woman also weeps profusely at the sight of the slain bodies. Azedine, seeing the surviving captured guards, asks what they intend to do. Annoyed, the guards reply that they will compensate the injured families on the farm. Azedine states that if they become penitent knights, he won't eliminate them. The 2 knights ponder a way out of their predicament, but it seems impossible. They finally agree, but suddenly a woman screams, refusing the proposal. She grabs an axe and in a grim tone declares, "You killed my son. You slaughtered him like an animal. And you called us heretics for no reason, even though we've been devoted to the king's church all this time. Even with the drought plaguing this land, we never resented it," the woman screams, emphasizing her point. One of the bound guards loses his temper and snaps, "Shut your mouth! How dare a lowly trash like you speak to a knight of the king's church like that?" As he tries to curse them all, he's silenced by a single, instant killing blow. The woman delivers the strike with her axe, killing the guard and leaving the other soldier alive and terrified. She says, "It doesn't matter. If they live, it will be a curse upon us. If we kill the knights, the villagers won't be protected by the king's law. We'll have to abandon the farm and live as nomads. A nomad's life is harsh, but it will be our fate." As dusk fell, the herald prayed by the graveside, surrounded by the fallen. Azedine and Midium felt a sense of calm, knowing they wouldn't have to worry about the knights rising as undead. After all, everyone had been buried, and the herald had offered a prayer. Midium wondered if it was blasphemous to consecrate the church knights according to the herald's order. Ishmael asked Azedine what would have happened if the knights had agreed to become penitents, and if the Emperor's herald would truly have forgiven them. If someone made a promise to a roadside stone, breaking it would be a sin. This was a declaration regarding the herald clan's promises. Under the royal law, once a promise was made, it had to be kept. Since the Aragasa had no souls, they were no different from roadside stones. Any promise made to such trash would be worthless. No matter how dishonorable the act, if the victim was one of the heralds, the transgression would be forgiven. Even if the Holy Knight swore to Azedine they would become penitent knights, no one could be sure they'd keep their promises, given their history. The protagonist told them it didn't matter, and asked if this was the law of Hybris. Since they were people of Hybris, they simply followed their principles. When the boy questioned what would happen if they made the promise and didn't keep it, the protagonist replied that grieving families wouldn't find peace that way. Survival was more important than revenge, especially since there were children among the victims. They might have gotten their revenge, but now they'd have to live as nomads, and that was a hard life. In the end, Midium understood that all of this was for the farmers. She noticed he seemed reluctant to eliminate the Holy Knights for some reason. The herald said he hated eliminating an opponent who had already lost. If he was forced to eliminate them in battle due to the enemy's lack of strength, that was a different situation. Ishmael noted his absolute confidence, even against the church knights. He wondered where the bastard had gone, seeing him nowhere. His companion said she saw him fleeing, and the group considered it good, as they wouldn't have to feed him. Meanwhile, Tarkv emerged from behind the bushes, announcing he was right here, much to the protagonist's annoyance. He noted another forced march at sunset, and Azedine just wanted to rest. The child screamed at the blind man and his group, blaming them for everything. If they hadn't come to their farm, her mother and father wouldn't have died. The woman protecting the girl apologized, explaining she was just a child. The blind pilgrim asked where they were going, and the farmer replied they'd head southwest. They'd take shelter with relatives and figure out the children's future. The protagonist knew southwest was the opposite direction of Salasma. The drought was worsening, so there was no reason for them to stay on the farm. Then the heretic bid farewell to the farmers, and their paths diverged. The farmer wished the emperor's blessing upon the herald, who responded with a smile, and the child asked if the emperor's blessing wasn't basically a curse. After all, her uncle had told her never to utter the word emperor. The owl lands on the master's shoulder, warning him that people are treating him like a plague. He worked tirelessly to bring them civilization and wisdom. If anyone's to blame, it's the emperor himself. He should have established a succession plan sooner, and the owl readily admits it. Even the single generation of peace he secured was incredibly valuable. The Yiga's God clan's generation could last for ages, and he agrees. The farmers head off to their relatives' homes, while the protagonist takes a different path. After parting ways, they mount up and ride into the desert. Tarkv is amazed he defeated so many holy knights from the church in one go. Midium asks if he actually saw anything, considering he was hiding like a coward. Embarrassed, the noble bastard admits he didn't see much at all. Azedine snaps at him to keep quiet. They can't let it get out that the herald defeated the holy knights. That would cause massive problems and huge complications. He still needs to investigate the gold coins the noble showed the mercenary group. It seems the heretic will have to stick with the bastard for a while longer. Suddenly, a merchant stops them in the middle of the road. The merchant caught the traveler's attention, asking if they'd like some tea. The herald noticed he was part of the Coruscant merchant guild. They decided to accept the tea, and everyone took a break to socialize. The merchant asked who the white-haired knight was. He explained that the knight was their contractor, and there was no risk of information leaks. His expression shifting, the merchant then asked where the herald, a 3-month rookie, was headed. The herald noticed the man's fake smile vanished instantly. He stated he was going to Salasma and asked if anything was happening there. The man said something was happening, and it would be fine if he refused to help. He explained it was a job to hunt wyverns and bandits. Azedine demanded some wormwood sugar snacks, declaring he'd take the mission if he got them. The Coruscant merchant handed over what Azedine requested to seal the deal. As soon as he got the sweets, Azedine pressed for more mission details. The merchant explained that the Order of Saviors was conducting relief efforts in the area. The problem, however, was that they were practically forcing merchants to make donations. The donations from the wealthy were supposedly for refugees, and he found the idea acceptable. Midium asked why he was so tolerant of the Order of Saviors. Azedine explained that many were taking shortcuts to avoid the order, and those paths were infested with wyverns and thieves. These bandit groups were actually fleeing refugees, and the Order of Saviors members were exploiting the situation to find copies of the Divine King's book. The merchant asked if the herald truly intended to accept the mission, especially since guild masters had warned him not to get involved in caravan affairs. Azedine declared he would do it because it was about helping people, not carrying out an assassination. The merchant asked if this was a noble mission that suited his taste. He added that the herald possessed something unique, as they say. However, Midium was furious at the comment and asked if she could finish off the merchant. He didn't answer, and she took the liberty of grabbing the merchant and pressing a knife to him. She demanded how he dared to act so insolently towards the messenger when he was just a servant. She ordered him to show respect to the messenger, warning that if he didn't, she'd eliminate him. Azedine quickly intervened, reminding her that even though she was Ether and held an official position, the man outranked him, and she should know that. Her lineage also valued the tradition of respecting elders. He ordered her to sheathe her blade if she wasn't planning to kill the man, and Midium obeyed. The girl retracted her weapon and took a large step back. The protagonist apologized to the merchant. The merchant had offered tea, and they had caused an unpleasant scene. Azedine told them to hurry up. After all, there were wyverns and bandits to hunt. The merchant suspected they had conspired, one to strike and the other to apologize, just to make a fool of him. On the road to complete their mission, the protagonist thanked the girl for what she had done. He advised her not to mess with anyone deeply connected to Sabanga. His predecessor had been purged for displeasing Sabanga. Tarkv asked if Sabanga was a family from the messenger lineage. The messenger lineage was more competent and structured than he had imagined. The heretic quickly understood that the merchant was asking for help to become a count and told him to stop. Then, the bastard declared that with the herald's skills, this request could be fulfilled. After all, Count Kazel was still young and shouldn't be planning his succession so soon. Plus, his mother had wealth and influence. If the count dangled the title of head of the house as bait, many would rush to offer fortunes. He would milk this situation for as long as possible, exploiting every noble, and the noble couldn't just stand idly by, watching it all unfold. The merchant pleaded with him to do it, explaining that his own people were causing trouble and had become a real headache for them. The two agreed, and Ismail pointed towards what looked like the inn the merchant had mentioned. They scanned the area, confirming it was the inn, while the protagonist practically vibrated with excitement to see a familiar face. The girl didn't quite grasp what he meant by familiar face, but they pressed on. That's when he spotted Swetina, a goat, and rushed to embrace her with overwhelming joy. The others were utterly bewildered, disappointed that he'd abandoned a goat, and now so ecstatic to reunite with her here. He explained that the place he'd found her was barren, so he'd asked the guild to relocate and care for her. The inn had clearly taken good care of the goat, feeding her well. With that, the group finally decided to enter the inn. Stepping into the inn, the noble was instantly stunned by the sight before him. His brother and sister stood right there, and he demanded to know what they were doing. He quickly explained to the soulless heretic that these were his half-siblings. When the herald asked if they were his rivals, he clarified that it wasn't quite like that. Noticing his companions, Kaka introduced himself, stating it was a pleasure to meet them all. His other half-brother introduced himself as Chico, while the protagonist presented their group as pilgrims. Declaring it a pleasure to escort Tarkv, his siblings, clearly worried, immediately asked about the mercenaries' fate. Ashamed, their brother admitted he'd been betrayed by the mercenaries, which was why this group was now escorting him. His siblings then invited them to come in, sit down, and talk over a meal. After hearing his tale, they realized their brother had been through quite an ordeal. They then asked where he planned to go next. The half-brother replied he was heading back to Salasma. Since the pilgrim group was also bound for Salasma, they decided to travel together. Kaka, the sister, warned them that a base of the Order of Saviors lay just ahead. Chico pointed out that the girl was beautiful and could be taken by the Order of Saviors, advising them to avoid the group. The herald scoffed, believing they wouldn't forcibly take someone who refused. After all, they served the three archangels. They wouldn't force anyone against their will. His half-siblings exchanged glances, noting his devout faith from his comment. As night fell, the tavern buzzed with the sound of everyone drinking. Suddenly, a drunk man stumbled up to the heretic, asking if they were the pilgrims traveling with them. Chico clarified that they were the employers and merchants, planning to bypass the forest to avoid the order. The drunk slurred that thanks to them, they could avoid monsters and travel easily, unlike others who wouldn't pay for mercenaries. Another drunk from the group chimed in, declaring them their benefactors. To reduce monster attacks in the forest, it's always better to have a large group. Monsters rarely hunt alone, and ultimately they were all helping each other. But the drunk started to get aggressive, thinking the blind man was mocking him. Then he declared it was a good idea to send the children ahead first. By then, Midium, Ismail, and Chico had already retreated to their rooms. One of the drunk merchants, wanting to curry favor, mentioned they had a long journey ahead. Our hero, claiming to be a pilgrim, politely refused the drunk's offered drink. The mustachioed man scoffed, calling it the lamest thing a young man could say. One of the merchants then asked if Our Lady could see, to which he replied he could see through the gaps. The bandage covering his wound quickly became a target for their taunts. Soon, the drunk demanded he remove it and show his injury. However, the protagonist made an excuse, claiming the wound was too gruesome to reveal. As they pressed him to show his eyes, Tarkv sharply told them to stop, stating he wasn't one for jokes and they should leave him be. He was a man with a complicated past. They should forget it and just drink. The drunk, however, thought such a conversation needed a good topic. He asked if the children he brought were his, adding that the girl was quite beautiful. Our hero lied, claiming they were his younger cousins. Then, the drunk, ill-intentioned merchant declared he wanted to adopt the girl. He insisted he'd take good care of her, while the rest of the group found his sudden desire to adopt the girl utterly hilarious. Azedine felt a pang of regret, but the girl's parents were waiting in the nearest village, and he absolutely wouldn't allow this. One of his companions snapped at the merchant, telling him not to even try to hide his vile intentions of raising the girl as a courtesan. The merchant finally relented, realizing he was powerless. Once more, the merchant poured a drink for the blind pilgrim, ordering him to down it. Our protagonist knew that further refusal would be rude, so he took the mug. A man leaned in, asking if they'd heard about a woman from the messenger clan, supposedly working at a sawmill. "Aren't they the monsters?" one merchant scoffed. The other shushed his group, urging them to listen. He explained that her father, a messenger, had conceived her during a journey, unable to take her back to the messenger lands. The sawmill owner bought the girl and raised her as a slave. The drunken, leering merchants agreed she had a pleasing face. But while slavery was legal, they knew the royal church would cause trouble if they found out. Another scoffed, claiming the church didn't care about messenger half-breeds and that the girl was a perfect slave. He wondered what would happen if they took her children. She'd birthed several over the years. Rumor had it, for a good bottle of booze, she'd spend the night with anyone. As one of them slurred, "Who's first?" our heretic shot up from the table. He stood, seething, practically snorting with rage. But then, to everyone's shock, he began to weep, sobbing uncontrollably. Our herald declared it revolting that the Holy King's subjects had fallen to such corruption. The men stared, asking what he was talking about. "We just said we wanted a slave," they protested. Our protagonist roared, "That's exactly the problem," and violently shoved the drunkards to the floor. One of them, his fingers nearly shattered, gasped, "Where does that blind man get such strength?" Suddenly, the soulless heretic began to pray, invoking the holy archangel of the Trinity, the one who swore to grant white magic to those who followed the three virtues. But humanity had strayed from those virtues, and the order of saviors was losing its power. This was how people shamelessly surrendered to corruption. The blind man declared, "The age of Jupiter is drawing near, and with it the three sacred virtues. Turn away from the pleasures of corruption and prostitution." Noticing his drunken state, they decided to call it a night. They had an early start tomorrow. The heretic insisted he could go alone, but they started dragging him out anyway. He grumbled that they'd ruined his fun. At that moment, the drunkards deeply regretted ever serving him a drink. But then, the noble Tarkv asked if he was just pretending to be drunk. "Obviously," he replied. He knew religious fanatics weren't exactly welcome here. Just then, the girl woke up. "They're not religious fanatics," she mumbled. "Just a bunch of drunks." Our hero ripped off his blindfold, realizing she was awake and had heard everything. Ishmael asked if the argument was about the messenger clan woman they'd mentioned. The blind man replied that he hadn't received any reports from his leader and needed to confirm if she truly belonged to the clan. Midium then asked if he would eliminate them if their story proved true. Our protagonist simply said, "It depends on the situation." The next morning, the entire group set out on a monster hunt. From here, they'd follow the forest path. If anyone spotted a monster, they were to scream. Azedine noticed there were more people on this mission than he'd anticipated, and there was something strange in the air, something Midium, with his keen instincts, had also picked up on. A chilling sense of dark magic, traces of its corruption, hung heavy in the air. It seemed no one else in the group, besides the two of them, had noticed. The girl spoke to Azedine, and he quickly told her to stay close to the mountain goat. Ahead, something was wrong. The unmistakable presence of red-eyed wolves. Fear gripped the girl as our hero warned, "Something's coming!" Suddenly, a pack of black, red-eyed wolves lunged forward, attacking. Our protagonist shouted, "They're undead beasts, attacking with savage fury." An elder in the group barks out a battle formation. Everyone obeys, raising their shields and spears to face the 5 wolves. The wolves, enraged, snarl and drool, eager to feast on human flesh. It's clear the undead aren't attacking head-on. Retaining memories from their living days, they try to encircle and hunt their prey. If there's a weak spot, the rear must be protected to prevent a flanking maneuver. Our hero realizes the vulnerable point is their exposed backs. Suddenly, one of the wolves savagely bites a man's arm. Tarkv, the noble bastard, orders everyone back and charges the creature. He slams his shield into the beast's mouth, knocking it back. He draws his sword and delivers a precise, fatal blow, annihilating the monster. The trio acknowledges his skill, noting he even donned armor to fight on their level. Chico rushes over, asking his half-brother if he's all right, and he's completely unharmed. But the cursed wolves keep their distance, staying just out of reach of swords and spears. Suddenly, they spot a strong man walking among the pack and wonder, is that Karim? They ask what happened to the others, but the elder warns, something's wrong with him. They realize their comrades have turned into zombies, some even still clutching their swords. At that moment, the hunting party realizes staying put means certain encirclement. The leader barks orders, "Grab your bows and start firing," while the shield bearers hold the front. Archers in the rear unleash a volley of arrows at the monsters. The arrows miss their marks, thudding into the ground near the creatures. Our protagonist didn't want to get involved, but he starts picking up stones from the ground. He hurls a stone with such such force that it obliterates an undead wolf, leaving everyone stunned as he declares, "I'll handle the hounds," and orders the rest of the group to deal with the zombies. Instantly, the fighters obey, cutting down the undead with their swords and spears. The bastard takes down another undead. Sister Kaka, too, wields her spear, battling the monsters. Fortunately, the mercenaries fight with skill, yet their organized movements hint at a sorcerer pulling the strings from behind. Our hero realizes this battle won't end easily. An owl watches the combat from high in a tree, while the merchants complain, "This wasn't part of the deal. They were hired to eliminate wyverns, not zombies," and the mercenaries confirm they had no idea either. The merchants decide to press on, confident they've wiped out all the zombies. The old man asks how he can be so sure there's nothing else lurking. One of them looks terrified, and the group declares they're turning back. Our hero asks if they really can go back, but the group doesn't quite grasp what he means. They start looking at the forest and notice something off. The road they were following has suddenly vanished. The path is sealed, the dirt road that guided them simply gone. Our protagonist declares the sorcerer blocked their escape route, clearly intending to wipe them all out. Azedine agrees. If they'd done something dirty to the clan woman, he wouldn't let them live either. But since he's unsure of the facts, Azedine can't let them die. Our hero asks the noble Tarkv to calm these people down. He states that a blind pilgrim won't convince them, but perhaps they'll listen to a noble. Tarkv gives his word to the protagonist, asking him to leave this task to him. He steps to the front of the crowd, raises his voice, ordering the worms to pay attention to him. He introduces himself as Tarkv, son of Duke Kazal and a descendant of the great divine king. He declares his life is infinitely more valuable than theirs, which clearly irritates them. He's ready to uncover the secrets of this place, while these insignificant beings are just worried about running away. He commands them to fight for him, to become living witnesses to his glory. That way, despicable beings like them would have something to boast about for generations to come. After his entire arrogant speech, the merchants ignore him and keep walking in silence. Seeing them leave, the herald asks how the noble could say something so terrible at that moment. Chico, in turn, questions how his brother managed to say that to them. Tarkv instructs them to follow the merchants, as a scattered team would leave them vulnerable. Kaka ponders that it might be more dangerous to return if the way back is obscured by a spell. Suddenly, the protagonist starts to feel a strange energy hovering over the place. He recognizes it as Butuma's shamanic dust, an extremely powerful dark magic. With such intensity, the sorcerer must have already died and become a vengeful spirit. Considering the presence of zombies nearby, this theory seems plausible to them, and his idea that the half-brothers were useful was now confirmed. Midium asks if this means the messenger clan woman is gone. However, the soulless heretic says he's still not sure. If she belongs to the clan, she might have inherited the ability to manipulate phoenix and wind energy. She might even have mastered dark magic, even while alive. If she's alive, they'll find traces of her in the village, and can talk to her from there. His companions emphasize that this would only be possible if she were alive. Then, they arrive in front of a sinister cabin in the forest. The door begins to bang wildly. The trio finds the village eerily silent. It seems the only beings there were the zombies they had just fought. As Tarkv's brothers walk through the village, they hear a loud noise coming from a cabin. They wonder if it's a zombie. A voice from inside claims to be human, but they suspect it's a zombie. The voice identifies itself as a paladin of the king's church, a real person, not a disguised undead. Our hero steps forward and removes the plank barricading the door from the outside. Abruptly, an armored figure bursts the door open and tumbles to the ground. Quickly rising, she sprints towards the dangerous forest. The paladin says, "This is something I need to do alone. Don't follow me." After some time, she regains her composure and thanks them for freeing her from the cabin, then introduces herself. She introduces herself as Maya, an officer of the Salasma diocese. Our protagonist knows she belongs to the king's church elite because she's a diocese officer. He asks how someone so important ended up in such a desolate place. Maya explains she came to this village on a sacred mission. However, while investigating a warehouse, monsters appeared and attacked her. The villagers panicked and locked her in this house. Since her weapon was with her horse, she couldn't break down the door. She could have used sacred divine punishment magic, but it would have been too dangerous for her. When they mention this, she realizes the village is indeed too quiet. She believes the villagers were turned into undead. The protagonist tells her that merchants and mercenaries defeated them on the way and decided to turn back when they reached the village entrance. Maya asks if the heretic saw any other paladins there. She explains she received orders from the bishop to eliminate wyverns in the region. Also, her father trains knights in formation, and they arrange to meet nearby. The woman reveals her father is also a paladin, a great one, and that both have protected the king's church for generations. Our heretic realizes this logging village is connected to the farm they pass through. The knight they eliminated might be Maya's father. Our hero finds it strange that the girl takes pride in defending the church for generations, considering that by the rules, paladins of the king's church shouldn't have children. He hasn't seen a zombie horse that could belong to her and carry her weapons. So he asks her to accompany them to scout the area and search for her horse and companions. Maya, the paladin, is pleased that Azedine is so considerate. The team scouts the village to find her belongings. Our hero finds this fate incredibly cruel. After finding nothing, Midium asks what Azedine plans to do. He wants to turn the logging village into a base and find the black magic sorcerer. Midium starts theorizing that the culprit might be human. However, black magic disasters are usually caused by vengeful spirits, returning as malevolent ghosts seeking revenge when someone dies unjustly or isn't properly buried. If a human performed the black magic, suspicion falls on the enslaved woman from the messenger clan. If she was murdered, she likely became a vengeful spirit. Our hero crafts his arrows using metal in the campfire's flames. He finds this process irritating and can't even use his lunar bow. If the goal is to hide their messenger clan identity while still being useful, this approach won't work. Midium asks if they can really make arrows so crudely. Azedine wants to make arrows better than goblin ones, using cheap iron for the tips. The girl asks if the heretic will try to convince the sorceress, should she still be alive. She believes he will, as he values ethics, but if it were up to her, the sorceress would be eliminated. Our protagonist doesn't think it's impossible she learned black magic in life, but it's more likely she became a vengeful spirit. While sad memories of a painful past might stir compassion, you can't use a broken vessel just out of pity. In Midium's mind, it's cheaper to buy a new vessel than to use a broken one out of sympathy. Even if he convinces her and doesn't eliminate her, Midium will still admire the heretic. Our hero finds this unexpected, noting the girl is starting to learn that protecting people is beautiful and noble. Ishmael tells Midium that forgiveness isn't even worth considering. He doesn't think it's fair to let someone who caused a black magic disaster live and still demand respect. Enviously, Ishmael wonders why she's so interested in a blind son of a traitor, especially since not even the clan elders show such sentiment. The herald, Azedine, states he does what must be done, regardless of whether they respect him or not. The heretic's attitude of ignoring Midium's interest in him irritates Ishmael. Tarkv and the paladin, along with their search teams, scout the village. Maya notices the fog is dense, which isn't normal. The duke's son, Tarkv, says monsters must be approaching. The paladin, in doubt, wonders who the blind man is after all. After all, he doesn't seem like a simple pilgrim, and even the noble, Tarkv, isn't sure who he is. Maya thinks this would be a specialized task for the paladin order, and someone trained should be in command. However, the trained person was locked in the warehouse, and if it weren't for them, he'd still be there. Maya can't retort what Midium said, and is left speechless. Suddenly, the paladin and the noble bastard sense a strange presence. Looking towards the forest, they spot a horde of undead heading their way. Tarkv laughs, finding these creatures quite interesting. At that moment, the blind man senses a greater presence, and a wyvern is seen soaring in the sky, swooping down and then ascending with its enormous wings. Our hero asks if it's part of the messenger clan that destroyed the village. The wyvern asks how they discovered its identity, and the protagonist replies that merchants told them. The monster reveals itself to be the woman who was enslaved simply for inheriting the messenger bloodline. When the herald asks if she's still alive, the sorceress replies, obviously yes. He doesn't know if it's true, as most vengeful spirits insist they're still alive. As he questions the woman about how she acquired this power, everyone listens intently. Kaka and Chico notice this discussion is lasting longer than they expected. The sorceress asks why she should tell him. If you want to know, you must become an undead under my control. Then, the wyvern sorceress swoops down, disorienting everyone. Our protagonist tells them to calm down, stating he has nothing to do with those who mistreated her. Midium watches the scene through a crack in the door, in shock. She steps out of the cabin and confronts the soulless heretic. Midium questions the idea of revealing they are from the messenger clan. Our hero asks about the situation with Tarkv's half-brother and the paladin. Ishmael says they'll have to eliminate them, and Midium had already expected that answer from him. The protagonist believes they shouldn't treat human lives this way, even if they are paladins of the king's church. The two children ask if he has a better solution as he prepares his arrows. Azedine says that if they themselves declared the strongest takes all, there's only one way to resolve this. He knocks an arrow and fires it with all his massive strength. The arrow tears through the sky, leaving the paladin and Tarkv in shock, striking the undead and shattering them with ease. At that moment, the herald declares he's showing who the strongest is, firing more arrows and eliminating more zombies from the horde. Seeing the undead horde remains vast, he prepares more arrows, striking the monsters in the face while the children watch his exquisite archery skills. Midium notices he's not hiding his messenger clan affiliation, and Ishmael agrees. She's sure Azedine's crescent moon bow is stronger than other messengers, but he became a messenger with no prior experience, and it's only been 3 months. In shock, the bastard grabs the shield and tells the paladin to block the blows. Midium wonders how Elder Khazar trained a failed recruit to Azedine's level. Just then, the wyvern returns, soaring over its undead army. Without wasting a second, the heretic fires 3 arrows, taking down another trio of zombies. The arrow whizzes past Chico, the noble's half-brother, who's stunned to be saved. Ishmael sees the girl with a bow firing arrows and asks if it's the crescent moon bow. Midium confirms she just can't be caught by the paladin named Maya. Meanwhile, Maya uses her mace to deal with the zombies, crushing their skulls with the solid metal weapon. Kaka, the half-sister, uses her sword to annihilate the undead too. Chico protects his brother, using his spear to pierce through the monsters. Azedine asks the sorceress if that's enough to tell who's stronger. The wyvern thinks the heretic is getting cocky just for shooting a few arrows. She lets out a fierce, piercing roar, giving Tarkv and the others a bad feeling. Sure enough, an undead bear appears, tearing down a tree right then. When this zombified bear shows up, Tarkv calls it Kipal. Suddenly, the wyvern unleashes another roar that terrifies the humans and fills them with dread. The sorceress says, "Those who hold back their skills too much end up losing. That's why I summoned the undead, and I think I should have sent them from the start." Maya and Tarkv face the giant undead bear and the zombie horde. The noble strikes the massive monster's head, but it barely flinches. Next, the bear lands a claw strike, which the shield-wielding bastard defends. Our hero observes the situation, deeming it almost a cheat. He aims an arrow and fires it at the wyvern. In response, the wyvern smashes the roof where Azedine stands with its weapon-like tail. With no time to escape, the roof collapses, and he plummets into the house. As he falls, Midium welcomes him. As they consider leaving, Azedine thinks the outside area might be too dangerous. At that instant, the bear corners Tarkv, who collapses to the ground. He freezes, stunned by the bear's terrifying presence. The bear lunges at him with a fierce, dominant roar. It then slams its claw into the ground, destroying the area, but Tarkv manages to escape just in time. We see Tarkv spitting a mouthful of red as the blow grazes him before he dodges. Meanwhile, the zombies keep closing in on the two, who scream in shock. Maya is terrified as the monsters surround and corner the defenseless Tarkv. She conjures her paladin magic, manifesting a massive yellow hammer, and invokes the spell Divine Punishment Strike to save the weakened man. She smashes the monsters with her gigantic magic hammer, and the noble watches in awe. As it hits the ground, the strike becomes explosive, defeating the zombies and the bear that were about to finish off the noble. Both collapse unconscious from the impact of the divine blow. Our hero realizes it's a blow that doesn't distinguish between friend and foe. Just as the sorceress had imagined, the soulless heretic is truly good. After all, defeating that zombie bear was a tough task. However, she still controls many undead animals. She asks, "What will the arrogant people of Hybris do now? How does it feel to be punished by someone you mocked and despised?" Midium and Ishmael start to feel the pressure, seeing the massive number of monsters. The sorceress declares, "This is the power of the messenger clan, the very people you hate so much." The heretic apologizes because the sorceress understands nothing of the clan's true power. At that moment, he knocks his arrow, and the sorceress is in complete shock. After all, the arrow he fired shattered half the wyvern's body. The wyvern crashes to the ground almost instantly, powerless to fight. It's then that the protagonist demonstrates the true power of his people. Their bows can make even the stars fall from the sky, and he fires 2 more arrows, striking 2 other wyverns that appeared out of nowhere. The first arrow hits the second midair, boosting the impact and the number of targets eliminated. He says, "The Emperor's order hunts even divine kings, and this is the people of Aragasa. The messenger clan is what others call them, but among themselves, the correct name for their people is Aragasa." Powerless on the ground, the sorceress recognizes who he is. Azedine introduces himself as messenger number 108 of the Emperor. The sorceress is defeated by a messenger from her own people. Our protagonist says that after everything his people went through, he truly eliminated her. Spitting more ichor, the wyvern starts to laugh, then collapses to the ground, unable to believe it, for it had waited 10,000 nights for this moment. From its childhood until now, it had waited for its people to come free it from its miserable life. No matter how long it waited, they never came to its rescue. Seeing the sorceress's true body, the protagonist assumes that by its state she's already eliminated, though she herself isn't aware of it yet. He tells the woman, "I'm sorry you had to go through this. After all, you endured all the humiliation and suffering inflicted on your people, all by yourself." Enraged, the sorceress says, "Apologies are useless now. My body is rotten and broken, and even my soul has been corrupted by dark magic. That's why I wish to annihilate all living things, for only their death can heal my pain." She then begins commanding the undead to corner everyone, and the children find themselves under immense pressure. The herald sighs, then demands to know where the witch's children are. She screams back, "They weren't the children I wanted. They're the offspring of Wybris's damned who violated me." The heretic declares that because they carry the blood of Aragasa, her children will suffer just as she did for 10,000 nights, perhaps even more. They will endure endless insults, growing to hate their own people, just as she did. If she doesn't want her pain to be their fate, she must surrender and reveal their location. Our hero, in the name of Emperor Yaislot, pleads with the woman, promising to find and save her children. The witch's demeanor shifts. "Will you truly save my children?" she asks, but then her hope falters. "No, it's impossible," she whispers to herself, but the soulless heretic insists it is possible. "Our people have always achieved the impossible, and that hasn't changed," he declares. "Even scorned by Wybris, our conviction has never dimmed." Ishmael observes that the heretic's words about conviction are clearly having an effect. Midium, however, scoffs, dismissing it as a pretty lie. "Conviction? Does it even exist?" she wonders. "Our messenger duties are nothing but a curse. No one feels true pride. They only crave power and wealth. Even our ancestors were consumed by greed. If we recover the God King's royal record, we can shatter this curse of servitude. The Aragasa will seize everything with overwhelming power, returning every ounce of scorn to the people of Wybris. It's a cruel system where only the powerful can exact revenge." So, his words must be lies. She can't shake the thought. Why do Azedine's words sound so incredibly convincing? At that very moment, the witch surrenders before the heretic, leaving Ishmael utterly stunned and Midium thrilled by our hero's actions. The woman's mind flashes back to a time when she was chained, her infant son beside her. Cold gnawed at them as she desperately tried to soothe his cries. Her hand touched his tiny face, tears streaming down her own cheeks, mirroring his pain. As she embraced her baby, a warmth spread through her. After all, he had only her. She collapses to her knees, the memory overwhelming her. "I trust in your pride and conviction," she whispers. "I have one request. Please, take in the children I couldn't save." At that instant, the black magic begins to dissipate, and the undead halt their advance. Midium finally realizes it is possible to save someone through conviction. Our hero kneels, taking the witch's hands in his own. He promises to fulfill her plea. "How many children are there?" he asks. "And do you remember where they were sold?" She nods, confirming she knows, and reveals she gathered clues in a hidden depot, ensuring she would never forget. Azedine demands to know the source of the dark magic. She reveals it was a grimoire, whispering secrets to her, claiming to be a copy of the God King's true record. The revelation leaves our hero reeling. Suddenly, an eerie power awakens. The flower breeze fire, the very flames of the autumn field, erupts, engulfing the woman. Scarlet flames consume her body, and she screams in agonizing pain. Our hero is left reeling from the sorceress's sudden demise. As he cradles her lifeless body, a voice cuts through the silence, branding him naive. A red-haired woman, her eyes hidden by a blindfold, appears. "That sorceress wasn't one of us," she declares. "You probably didn't even realize, did you? After all, you can't use magic." Our hero demands to know her identity. "I am Calypso," she replies, "the 106th in the lineage of messengers. I hunt evil spirits and gather copies of the Divine King's book." Azedine challenges her presence, reminding her this territory falls under his jurisdiction. Calypso scoffs. "Rumors of your incompetence have reached my ears," she retorts, whispering that you can't even control your own subordinate. "I couldn't possibly stand by while such a disgrace shames the messengers." Beside Calypso, Midium presses her blade against the throats of several familiar men. "Doesn't the lady understand the situation?" she snarls. Calypso merely shrugs. "They're the same fools Midium nearly decapitated back in the messenger village. They joined me, hoping for revenge." The sorceress's soul had been ripped away, leaving behind nothing but a common corpse. Yet our hero still had questions. Calypso, however, cuts him off, branding Azedine, the 108th, incompetent. "That woman wasn't Aragasa," she states, "and she didn't possess the flower breeze fire. Azedine, you never even needed to get involved. Late as it is, you should be thanking me for saving you the trouble." Suddenly, a single page from the Divine King's book tears itself from the woman's body. Calypso lunges to seize it, but as her fingers close in, something bizarre happens. The page darts away, soaring past her outstretched hand, and settles gently into Azedine's grasp. Enraged, the herald Calypso snarls, "Why did that copy go to that trash?" She unleashes an arrow imbued with flower breeze fire, may rain. The projectile strikes the page, ripping it from Azedine's grasp and pinning it to a nearby tree. Calypso glares, deeming him audacious for even touching such power. A silent truth hangs in the air. The page seems to recognize its true owner, drawn by an impressive spiritual power. Midium observes, only in this way would the Divine King's book truly manifest. She then turns to Calypso, her voice sharp. If you're truly Aragasis, you should stop burning the Emperor's lands for no reason. You should be ashamed, setting fire to a drought-stricken forest. Calypso snaps, silence, daughter of Ether! You're being a chatterbox! Midium bristles with anger. Calypso asserts her authority. I am a messenger. You are merely a subordinate. Ether's lineage means nothing. A mere subordinate doesn't dictate my actions. Midium glares back, deeming them nothing but petty cowards. Azedine is sure Calypso was from his class and thinks he remembers her. He asks if she has a problem with how he trains his subordinates. Calypso laughs. After all, her rank is higher than his, and she tells him to respect his elders. Ishmael has no patience for this bickering between old grumps. He asks if Azedine personally examined the deceased woman's body, wanting to know the children's whereabouts and any information about them. They claim the woman is from Wybris, not Aragasa, and refuse to help her. But the protagonist insists she is an Aragasa. She endured 10,000 nights of torture in the name of Aragasa. Alone, she bore the clan's humiliations, only to be cast aside for not having pure blood. Aragasa's honor would be stained, and in that moment, he grasps something complex. It's not showmanship or hypocrisy. Azedine is always sincere. Whether Aragasa or Hybris, he lives with sincerity, upholding his pride and honor to the very end. Even in times like these, he maintains his will in a final, sublime, aesthetic manner. Suddenly, Calypso and the others burst into laughter, for the clan's greatest language speaks of Aragasa's honor. Calypso challenged Herald Azedine to a duel. She wagered the copy of the king's book she'd just won, and Ether's daughter, her subordinate. In return, Calypso would bet her rank and reveal the whereabouts of the recently deceased woman's children. If Azedine won the duel, he would become the 106th. The herald asked why Ether's daughter was part of the wager. Calypso wanted to make her subordinate, teaching her to respect superiors and value clan affairs. When the girl reeled in shock, Azedine placed a hand on her head. The king's book chose him, he declared. There's no reason to wager it. If they find the diary the woman mentioned, they won't even need information about the children. Now leave, he commanded. I'm busy. Calypso's fury flared, and she cursed Azedine for ignoring her. She stated that if she lost, she would find the woman's children, free them from servitude, and bring them to the clan's sanctuary. The herald, however, would only accept the wager on the condition that Calypso became their guardian and raised them in the Aragasa way. Calypso, the 106th, weighed the herald's terms and asked if they would have an official duel, 100 paces apart. Azedine found that too much trouble and suggested they get straight to the point. Before the woman could react, a devastating blow struck her face. She crumpled to the ground, spilling tomato sauce. Already defeated, her subordinates stared in shock. She'd been defeated in a single second. The herald ended the duel with a stone and ordered her to fulfill her promise. Calypso's men gaped, stunned by her swift defeat. Azedine ordered them to check on the injured. They wondered if he'd used a hidden weapon. Calypso was clearly out of arm's reach. In truth, they hadn't even seen him move. He pressed the messenger to uphold her promise. The men tried to argue that a surprise attack wasn't acceptable. Azedine countered that he'd attacked by surprise to take her down without lasting injury. Perhaps I should have hit her face fair and square, he mused. Fear gripped the men, and they quickly changed their minds, agreeing to fulfill the promise. Azedine counted on them as Calypso lay unconscious on the ground. Azedine quickly checked the injured paladin and Tarkv. He found no internal bleeding or fractures. Everything seemed surprisingly stable. He ordered his men to toss Tarkv into the wagon. Midium called the herald, asking if he'd also picked up medicine. The herald replied it wasn't quite like that. When he looked far, his vision narrowed, but the closer he focused, the wider his field became. With practice, he could easily discern bones within a human body. The next injured person was on the other side, and he simply gestured for his men to handle it. Kaka and Chico were the injured Azedine had indicated. They suffered severe abdominal wounds from their collision with the bear, their armor only worsening the impact. Maya had no serious physical injuries, but the psychological trauma from the self-destruction weighed heavily. They felt there was no need to keep a certain individual alive, and that was the herald's grim intention. They found him stubbornly resolute. Next, Midium urgently called for Azedine and Ishmael, declaring they needed to depart immediately. They scrambled into the wagon and set off down the road. The girl remarked that unexpected events just wouldn't stop. First, the black magic disaster, then the copy of the Divine King's book, and now, even the stirrings of Kurt's new gods. She asked the herald if this was the prelude to a great chaos. He, however, replied it wasn't a prelude at all. Chaos had already begun. Suddenly, Calypso woke up abruptly, her eyes wide with fright. His men worried for her, but the woman grew even more startled seeing Azedine. Seeing her on her feet, he told her, "It's time to fulfill your promise." She explained that in the storage room, her subordinates had discovered a peculiar object belonging to the woman. It was an umbilical cord wrapped in bandages, with the children's birth date scrawled upon it. Additionally, a piece of paper held information the merchants had recalled. Our hero would check on the children alongside Salasma, while she handled the rest. As a messenger, she kept her promises, wouldn't complain, and counted on his help. Azedine asked why she was speaking so normally. Calypso replied, "You're my veteran." Then she pressed him, "How did you take me down? You can't even use the Moonflower Firebird," until she realized it was the work of Elder Kazas, who had taught him secret tricks. Even so, our protagonist had no intention of explaining his techniques. When the time came, he would act himself. He then asked about the wand Calypso was using. She explained that Kurt's cultists from her sector had possessed it, and she'd snatched it from them. At that moment, the herald understood. This wand was a mass-produced item, just as he had suspected. Calypso donned her mask and declared, "I'll finish this task quickly." When she left, the protagonist felt a wave of relief. Seeing the two children sleeping together so sweetly, and also his half-siblings and subordinates, he couldn't help but crack a smile. Realizing everyone had pushed themselves hard, he decided to grab some sleep too. The next day, Maya asked if all the undead had been defeated. The merchants confirmed that the mercenaries they hired had taken care of it. Furthermore, most of them had been vanquished by her and the half-siblings. They found a corpse beneath the dry tree, and upon its removal, the black magic vanished. The woman felt immense relief to hear this. Our hero mused that it would have been better to coordinate their story for her beforehand. Chico asked where everyone intended to go now. The siblings planned to stay at the nearest inn, then return to the guild as they were injured. They asked if the officer intended to head straight for Salasma's diocese. Maya would search for her father while they proceeded to Salasma first. She wanted to leave now and act swiftly, now that her decision was made, hoping to meet them again if fate allowed. Azedine wished her, "May the grace of the great archangel be with you." The woman then departed, and Midium asked if he was worried about the paladin. "No, it's not that," he replied. "It's just, since morning I haven't heard the Emperor's voice." The group members extinguished their campfire and told the protagonist to take a horse. It was a horse with a delivery destination already reserved. The noble asks if he refuses to obey the descendant of the divine king. Ishmael thinks he didn't want to walk, and the protagonist understands. After all, he's a noble. Chico wants to talk to the blind pilgrim and knows he's no ordinary traveler. He's ashamed to admit it, but explains his sister reads fortunes and predicts the near future. Our hero thinks the siblings are talented, but also con artists. She tells Azedine that soon he'll be a great knight, perhaps even hailed as a great knight by the Emperor's messenger. Our protagonist thanks her for her words, and they part ways. Gazing at the sky, he wonders where the owl went and tries to find it. Ishmael warns that the goats are starting to suffer badly. It's dry, and they desperately need water. Tarkv says the east wasn't so bad. Azedine points to a nearby town and decides they'll stop there. Noticing dead fish in the water, the group realizes the goats will get sick if they drink it. The heretic tells his group to pick up the pace. Villagers warn that if the fish die and rot, they'll be inedible. The blind man and the group begin to analyze the fish's condition. They know that if they keep fishing like this, they'll deplete the fish stock. Midium suggests they might as well fish and eat them now, since the fish will die anyway. They tell the heretic that if the river hasn't completely dried up, there must be a well nearby. To get water from the well, they need the villagers' permission. Tarkv reassures them, saying they needn't worry. As a knight, he'll secure the permission. He approaches the peasants authoritatively, demanding water from the well and ordering them to bring it without complaint. Midium plans to educate Tarkv later, and Azedine is counting on her for it. Our hero, Azedine, pretends to be a blind pilgrim again to get what he wants. Midium agrees the tactic works perfectly, as people feel sympathy. Getting close to the Hybricios isn't how a common messenger acts. It's Azedine's way. The problem is, Midium shows great interest in Azedine's way, which makes him jealous. Our protagonist calls his two companions closer. Ishmael doesn't want to be swayed by Azedine's methods. They enter the village and acquire a massive haul of lobsters. Our hero thanks the peasant, showing modesty and hesitation about accepting such a generous offer. The man explains that if he leaves the lobsters there, they'll all rot, and he should see it as a lobster festival and enjoy it. Azedine brings the lobsters to the group, and the girl asks what he plans to do with them. The blind man wants to find the son of the woman who died before him, believing the boy must be nearby. Ishmael questions questions what they'll do after finding the child. The heretic explains they can't take the child with them. After all, the Coruscant Merchant Guild will be passing through the village square. They'll leave the child with the guild, and then Calypso will take him. Midium believes the protagonist is actively seeking trouble. Even if it's a tough path, he sees it as the true calling of a messenger. He's convinced that if he keeps fulfilling his duty as a herald, the Emperor's voice will resurface one day. Meanwhile, they wonder if Calypso truly lost to Herald Azedine, the 108th, and if she'll surrender so easily. After immense effort, Calypso had finally acquired the bone wand that tracks the Divine King's book. If they wasted any more time, other messengers would surely overtake them. Her goal was to achieve great feats quickly and ascend to a high rank within the founding Saban family. She had risked her life for this very purpose. Calypso became a herald solely on her talent, without any family backing. Yet, being at the lowest rung of the hierarchy fueled her fury. But now, she accepts her defeat and refuses to be consumed by rage. Suddenly, a man arrives, calling out for Lady Calypso. She orders him to ensure the Coruscant Merchant Guild maintains absolute secrecy and to keep everything about Azedine under wraps. She doesn't want to be the only one to suffer, and a sinister plan is already brewing in her mind. A voice speaks to the 106th, and Calypso demands, "Who is that?" The voice claims to be Ariel, a fact Calypso can somehow confirm. When her subordinate asks what happened, the herald snaps, "Be quiet!" Yet she finds it doesn't make sense. The Emperor's voice isn't just a mere artificial spirit. It's a grand magic that organically links all artificial spirits. The voice transmits information, a magic so powerful that only the Emperor himself can create it. Calypso wonders if Ariel somehow managed to eliminate it, even if only vaguely. Calypso asks what Ariel's voice wants, and it replies, "I have a proposal the herald won't be able to refuse." Then, we see Ariel's voice manifests as a crow with a glowing red eye on its belly. Meanwhile, the protagonist asks about the child, but the peasants claim they don't know her, telling him to look elsewhere. However, one of them lets slip that the child came from the Tavern guild. Another peasant quickly insists they know nothing, and the protagonist notices they're clearly avoiding the conversation. Midium finds the situation highly suspicious, and the protagonist believes the location matches what the woman had mentioned. Just then, the noble Tarkv arrogantly tries to force the villagers to speak, declaring they stand before the Divine King's blood and dare not refuse to answer. A frightened old man stammers that the baker has contact with the Telbaran Guild and points to the bakery's chimney, the baker's home. The entire group immediately decides to head for the bakery. After all, that's where they'll find what they're looking for. The child is only 8 years old. She couldn't have endured anything too severe. If she was made to work, it could only have been simple household chores. The baker was puzzled by the sudden rush of customers. As he asked what they wanted, the group's eyes fell on children inside his home. Tarkv replied that they were looking for someone. Describing her as a 9-year-old girl, he showed them the details on the paper the woman had left. The baker asked why they were looking for the child. When asked what he would do with such information, he claimed he wasn't a curious person. He explained the child had actually passed away, frail ever since she arrived in the village. The noble knight then demanded to know who the children in his storeroom were. The baker explained they were orphans he'd taken in because they had nowhere else to go, providing them with food and work. Tarkv seemed to believe him, but the herald pressed, asking how the child's funeral was conducted. The baker bristled, asking why he'd ask such a question. Our hero signaled Tarkv to act, and he obeyed, delivering a brutal kick to the baker's gut, sending him sprawling. Then, grabbing his hair and threatening him, Tarkv snarled, "We came for the child! A promise was made between her parents and someone important. At the very least, we need to know where her funeral was held." Tarkv commanded him to spill everything. The baker confessed he simply tossed the body into the river. Our hero demanded, "Have you lost your mind, throwing a child's body into the river?" But then it clicked. They bought cheap kids from the guild, worked them to death, and when they finally perished, they just tossed them into the rivers whenever the water rose. In a world where the dead forget they're not alive and return to life, committing such an atrocity was sheer idiocy. Still gripping and threatening the baker, Tarkv asked Azedine what he would do if he would eliminate this man. The baker reeled in shock at the words. Ishmael then asked if Azedine would save the children, even if they weren't of his lineage. Regardless, the baker was clearly dealing with the Telbaran Guild. If they rescued the children, Ishmael suggested leaving them with the Coruscant Merchant Syndicate. Inevitably, this would spark a conflict with the guild, and they wondered if the syndicate would even allow it. The Coruscant Merchant Syndicate was a front, helping messengers, but it was heavily commercially driven. Even for a herald's plea for children not of his bloodline, it was highly improbable they'd risk a syndicate war. A problem had emerged that wouldn't be solved with mere justice or compassion. They urged Azedine to share his wise opinion and enlighten the inexperienced. The blind man asked Midium if the boy had always been like this. She didn't think so, as was expected of a child chosen as a devotee, and agreed Ishmael's sharp analysis was spot on. As they prepare to discuss the case, the noble scoundrel suddenly erupts in a scream, lashing out at the baker and accusing him of treating the chief's oath to protect children like trash. Our hero challenges the noble knight, demanding to know when he took charge. Tarkv reassures his boss, telling him not to worry, as they can take the children to his mother's place. He believes the environment there is far better than the villages. The blind man, astonished that even the most worthless can be useful, resolves to take matters into his own hands. The noble continues his brutal assault on the screaming baker. Through his persuasive methods, the noble forces the baker to sign a confession for selling the children. They'll inform the Coruscant Guild, ensuring the children are taken to the Baroness's estate. Later that night, peasants are seen mending wagon wheels. Suddenly, they spot Azedine walking nearby and are visibly shocked. Our hero doesn't recognize them, but they insist they always treated him kindly, like his veterans. Midium, confused, wonders why they call themselves veterans when they're neither heralds nor devotees. One of them points a sword at Azedine, declaring he's been expelled from the herald's clan, and orders him to come quietly. Our hero scoffs, asking if they're drunk or just completely delusional. They insist it's no joke, claiming his expulsion was decreed by higher powers. Giving up on explanations, they decide to simply seize him. If they deliver him to their superiors, they'll become messengers. Azedine asks if that's their true objective. That's why they drew their swords in the middle of the village. As the men remain armed, Azedine calmly asks to borrow Ishmael's staff. Absurd as it sounds, he wants to hear the full story directly from them. However, the self-proclaimed veterans sneer, asking if Azedine has forgotten the days they beat him daily until he cried like a child. Our hero remembers they used to force him to kiss them, claiming his face resembled Ariel's. The trio accompanying Azedine recoils in disgust at the revelation. Furious with the two, Azedine declares they're about to learn a harsh lesson. In an instant, both men lunge at him, swords flashing. They strike simultaneously, blades aimed for a killing blow. Our hero, the herald, catches both blades bare-handed, halting their assault. Seeing him grip the raw steel with his bare hands, they freeze in shock, then erupt in fury. Then he scoffs, sliding his hands along the blades as they crackle with pulsing purple energy. Unleashing the poetry of flowers and winds Kazat style, he blasts them back with explosive magic. They fly through the air, crashing hard to the ground, injured and their sword blades shattered. They realize he used a cutting lightning strike, utterly bewildered, as they believed he couldn't use magic. Azedine mutters, wanting at least one of them to survive. The older men notice a strange twilight descending. Suddenly, Azedine vanishes, leaving them seething with hatred. One man charges, but Azedine seems to teleport through the shadows, reappearing behind both of them. By the time they realize it's already too late, he unleashes his From Twilight to Nightfall ability, a devastating combo in a single strike. They take a massive, brutal blow from behind, sending them flying and leaving them severely wounded. They feel their bones shatter on impact as they slam into the ground. They realize the speed of the From Twilight to Nightfall combo was utterly absurd. They'd always heard Azedine couldn't use magic, and now they desperately want to know how he just did that. The herald remarks that with this kind of terrain, it's hard to go easy on anyone. Seeing that both men were still conscious, the herald commented on their surprising resilience. Now, he really wanted to hear their story properly. Just then, a raven landed, delivering a dire warning to the 108th messenger, Azedine. The emperor's voice, which had been silent, suddenly returned. Speaking through an intermediary, the voice declared that the patriarch had expelled him from the clan, and to make matters worse, the service curse had been activated. This news sent a shockwave through Azedine's colleagues. The service contract between the heralds and the emperor was known as a curse because it enforced absolute loyalty. If the patriarch and clan elders collectively decided to activate it on someone, that person would be forced to bear a successor before their own death, and the only way to fill that void was to curse another. Our hero demanded to know if he had been cursed with such a fate. The raven revealed the curse would activate in 1 year, forcing him to give birth to another clan member before he perished. Just like his father, Akre, Azedine would be forced to bear a child. Tarkv was utterly stunned by this revelation. He struggled to comprehend how Azedine could have a child, questioning how a man could possibly give birth. He even asked who the child's father was, and the mother too. Our protagonist was utterly desperate upon hearing this news, demanding to know why the Emperor had created such a contract. However, the penalty hadn't been set by the Emperor, but by the first patriarch, Harkonia himself. Furthermore, the Emperor's voice was about to reveal something it shouldn't to our protagonist. Azedine pressed the voice to speak quickly. The Raven explained that the Emperor's voice magic was created with a strict condition, never to reveal certain information, ensuring the artificial spirit's eternal existence in this world. The very act of being stripped of its duty was already eroding the Emperor's voice's existence. Yet the Emperor's voice forced itself to speak to Azedine out of consideration, breaking its own rules just to communicate with him. Those present questioned why the herald was so special. Tarkv realized his chief was truly exceptional. Ultimately, because of the curse, Azedine would cause a male body to become pregnant and then perish. The Emperor's voice explained that the curse would eliminate him, but despite that, it recognized him and held him in high regard. The veterans found Azedine insolent for offending the Emperor's voice, which was the Emperor's will itself. Infuriated, Azedine retorted that he was being insolent because he was drowning in problems and wouldn't revere nobility in such a situation. Midium wondered if this was even possible. After all, Azedine had been born in a peculiar way, so perhaps it was. But this wasn't a normal method, it was a curse. Our hero demanded the Emperor's voice explain why a hard-working herald in another country would be expelled. That's when the Emperor's voice revealed that Azedine's twin sister had eliminated Elder Kenahan. She then stole all recovered copies of the Divine King's book and fled. Ariel had committed the ultimate crime, treason. Ishmael remarked that this made the activation of the service curse make sense. Azedine, her brother, argued that Ariel was the traitor, and it made no sense to expel him. Another herald suspected Azedine might be siding with Ariel. The protagonist bristled. After all, Ariel was the one who'd left the scar on his face. He would never side with her. The veterans, unaware of their true relationship, assumed they were close. From their perspective, Ariel had always been fiercely protective of Azedine and held great affection for him. Our hero lost his composure and cursed out the two veterans for their assumption. When Ariel was soaring in power, Azedine, the heretic, hadn't even earned a single copper coin from it. He grabbed both by their collars, threatening them as he screamed. Azedine roared, "I don't get coins! People tell naughty children their punishment is marrying me, while they suck up to Ariel, calling her Harkonia's reincarnation and the perfect example of our lineage." He couldn't fathom why he was being expelled and suffering the service curse. His colleagues notice he's truly furious like never before. When the two veterans claim ignorance about his rage, he releases them. He starts laughing, a desperate, deranged sound. He's reached a point where he wonders if he should eliminate every member of the lineage, contemplating a true, elaborate betrayal. The two veterans suggest he go to the patriarch and elders to request the expulsion be revoked. After all, only one person in their lineage truly died because of the service curse. Enraged, Azedine reveals that person was his father, Akre. After that comment, the blind herald feels even more hatred. He knows the only way to survive is to ask the patriarch to revoke the expulsion, a decision his team considers sensible. The two, bruised by Azedine, ask if he wants to pretend he was captured by them in front of the patriarch. Our hero then asks, "Do you two want to be castrated right now?" Both find castration too cruel a punishment, but the heretic doesn't think it's cruel, remembering what they did to him as a child. They admit their guilt, explaining the plan was for Azedine's safety. After all, the patriarch issued an order to arrest or execute him. They ask if he'll really fight every lineage member he encounters, especially since other Herald clan members might try to execute him. If he's captured without resistance, they'll treat him even worse. That's why Azedine intends to appear before the patriarch of the Salasma area on his own terms. Anyone who tries to stop him will get a beating, and besides Aldis and the patriarch, the rest don't matter. He puts the two in the wagon and counts on them to look after the children. They affirm they'll safely escort them to Baroness Nort, Tarkv's mother. They'll report that the Emperor's voice defended him, believing him to be the ideal herald. If not for the Emperor's voice, he wouldn't have acted so drastically, and they'll testify on his behalf. After they bid farewell, the hero group arrives in Salasma. It was a city of 3,000 households with attached farms, flourishing since ancient times thanks to abundant copper mines. alliance. The noble immediately declares himself the son of Count Kazal, stating he has urgent business. As he rides his horse cutting the line, everyone gets annoyed. The guards let him pass without hesitation. Our heretic thinks they arrived too quickly, as they're already near Salasma. Tarkv asks if he earned good merits with his boss this time. Suddenly, the protagonist recognizes two men from the Coruscant Merchants Association. By their expressions, they must know about the execution order against him. When the bastard notices the men's hostile stares, he confronts them indignantly, asking arrogantly, "Are you staring at me just because I'm the son of Salasma's Count Kazal?" When they apologize, Tarkv demands they prove their regret with actions. He says he's thirsty and wants something to drink. The two go to fetch it, and the protagonist acknowledges Tarkv is useful and has a talent for acting. He notices the men from Coruscant can't even get close. The group asks if the heretic intends to extort money from people and spots a group carrying what looks like valuables. As it turns out, they were looting, as always. Suddenly, a white-haired woman arrived on horseback, flanked by her fleet. Tarkv recognized Vine, his older half-sister, and demanded to know what she was doing there. He noticed her looted goods and food, realizing how similar the two siblings were. She asked what happened to the mercenaries who were with him, stating that something bad went down. Vine suspected he was behind it, having heard that Lord Kazal had been defeated. Rumor had it he'd lost all his subordinates and even a limb. The young man believed that living honestly would bring him luck and ancestral protection. Seizing the moment while Tarkv was in shock and alone, Vine lunged at him. Sword in hand, she charged, intent on ending him. Suddenly, a stone flew through the air, striking Vine's hand and disarming her. Furious, she demanded, "Who did that?" Our hero, disguised as a blind pilgrim, found her overly aggressive approach strange. Her accompanying mercenaries also drew their weapons and advanced on Tarkv. His younger half-brother, Tarkv, asked if she truly meant to kill him. She retorted that it was better than searching for some divine king's book, whose whereabouts she didn't even know. Startled, Tarkv looked up to see a madman preparing a brutal strike. The man descended, sword slashing, and the noble defended himself, locking into a clash of strength. The man landed a cut, then used the impact to leap back. Tarkv declared she was making a huge mistake, asking if she even knew who he was with now. He added that Azedine could handle this with just a finger if he wanted to. Seeing the herald standing still, Tarkv pleaded for his help to deal with the situation. Azedine, however, said he wanted to see the noble's skills. Midium chimed in, "Azedine isn't alone anymore, but if he was hit by the curse of service, there's probably already something growing inside him." As Midium dropped that bombshell, Tarkv continued to battle his sister and the mercenaries. In shock, Azedine declared Midium's thought about his belly was horrifying. Midium told him not to get angry, as it would be bad for the baby. The fight raged on, and Vine grew furious that they were just chatting and ignoring her. So she unleashed a strike against the herald, which manifested as a kind of magical whip. Azedine dodged and told Midium and Ishmael to fight, but not to kill the woman. However, the two youngsters saw their opponents wielding real swords and didn't understand Azedine's request. Even so, the soulless heretic wanted to test the two children, watching to see if they would annihilate her. Both drew their swords, realizing there was no other way but to obey. The mercenaries also brandished their blades, and a full-blown combat was about to erupt. The protagonist watched, wondering why Tarkv was struggling so much to win. Among the mercenaries, the most skilled was a soldier with droopy eyes, who was set to fight Ishmael. He delivered an upward slash, trying to obliterate the kid, but his weapon struck the ground as the boy dodged, leaping behind the soldier. Ishmael managed to land a blow on the back of the most skilled mercenary. The protagonist noted it wasn't a fatal blow, but if left unchecked, it would cause death from catch-up loss. Despite his youth, Ishmael possessed considerable skill and dodged with impressive agility. In Azedine's eyes, he'd make an excellent herald. So the boy continued fighting his enemies, proving superior in combat. Meanwhile, the noble Tarkv mishandled his horse and was thrown to the ground. Azedine thought he was incredibly foolish. He had great gear, but made too many mistakes. A soldier began to charge full force at Tarkv, aiming to finish him off. Azedine knew it was his turn to act and grabbed a stone. He hurled it at the soldier, making him scream in pain. After their defeat, Vine complained that they had been forced to return the spoils and made to work hard. Azedine told her she should feel lucky it ended this way and not worse. "After all, we'll return in kind what was done to Tarkv. Since you haven't killed anyone, you're being spared. But if you disobey or cause trouble again, you'll be punished far worse." With that, the older sister and her group fled, scrambling away. Tarkv found her despicable for trying to eliminate a relative for inheritance rights. The inheritance issue shouldn't have mattered so much to Tarkv, who had gotten along well with his sister until then. They notice a newfound calm in Azedine, a stark contrast to his recent turmoil. Midium remarks that physical and emotional shifts are common during pregnancy, but Azedine snaps back, "This isn't about that. Bearing a child because of a service curse is far from normal. This pregnancy won't follow the path of any ordinary one. Ishmael questions why Azedine returned Bayun's spoils, yet sold others directly. Azedine explains he couldn't return everything alone back then. There were too many mercenaries. Besides, most items would just be junk to those fleeing, save for the candlestick. The herald has always been flexible, adapting to the situation. He challenges Ishmael. Got a problem with that? Ishmael admits he can't grasp Azedine's motives, calling the heretic a foreign body. He finds it easier to understand someone who gives themselves over to murder and plunder. Azedine claims he even understands Ishmael, but Tarkv cuts them off, demanding silence. Ahead on the path, the Order of Saviors awaits. They spot the banner with its distinctive three-winged wheel. They're struck by the sight of the Order of Saviors base up close. Azedine admires the order, but Ishmael suspects they're from Hybris, and the rumors surrounding them aren't good. Midium wonders if they should share the rumors, though she doubts it would sway his admiration for the order. When Ishmael points out her concern for others, she replies, "I don't want to stress pregnant women. It's not good for them." Hearing this, Azedine snaps, "Midium, you're starting to annoy me." He knows the elders who removed him from his post. Fearing Ariel made a grave mistake. When he meets the patriarch, his curse will be lifted. He swiftly gathered 2 copies of the Divine King's book and 3 gold coins, an unprecedented feat, even among messengers, giving him ample leverage for negotiation. They won't eliminate him just for stealing their copies of the Divine King's book. As much as they despise him, thinking otherwise is just paranoia. They watch many people stream into a tent bearing the Order of Saviors symbol. A noble knight grumbles, picking up stones from the ground, clearly annoyed by such menial labor, believing himself superior. Ishmael tells Midium the herald headed towards the Order of Saviors a short while ago. He brought blankets for the night, but Midium insists it was a loan. If he doesn't return them, he'll go to hell or reincarnate as one of the herald's lineage. Ishmael asks if that's a curse, finding her motivation oddly inspiring. Midium asks if Azedine took some bread, finding it odd since they already have supplies. He replies he was curious about the Order of Saviors' provisions, claiming he didn't steal, but made an offering. Midium finds it strange he'd give money to the Order of Saviors. Azedine asked for their seal on his parchment, but they refused. Midium explains that in books the Order of Saviors appears heroic, but in reality, once they learn he's of the herald's lineage, they'll try to eliminate him. Azedine shrugs it off, saying even if they do, it won't be a betrayal of his faith. When Azedine tries to eat the Order of Saviors' bread, he finds it horrible and rock hard, so they toss it into the pot to boil with the rest of their meal. Midium questions if such bread should even be added to their food, fearing it's unhealthy. She thinks it smells like sawdust, but the herald tells her to stop complaining about the food. This bread was prepared by the Order for refugees, and he took it out of curiosity, unwilling to simply discard it. 3 grimy children appear, claiming they haven't eaten in 3 days and begging for alms. Tarkv states he only gives bread to adults. Children must join the order to receive provisions. Azedine offers them the emergency food he acquired from the Order of Saviors. Tarkv, a knight in name only, can't fathom why he'd distribute food to inferior beings. After all, charity is the Order of Saviors' duty, not a knight's. Azedine, though not a refugee himself, had acquired supplies from them. He asked the children to see it as a way of returning the favor. Our hero realized the refugees had sent the children to beg. He decided to prepare something for the children to take back with them. Just then, 2 hooded men appeared, claiming the heretic was doing admirable work. A bald old man then expressed surprise, not expecting him to have the guts to walk the main streets, even with an arrest warrant issued by the lineage. The protagonist recognized him as the chief of the Salasma region. This was the very person they were looking for, and he had shown up on his own. His subordinate intervened, telling Azedine he should address him as Lord Salem, the regional chief. The subordinate added that he'd heard the heretic had trampled the association members, assaulted and humiliated them, claiming messengers were more important than servants. Our herald knew the old man held one of the highest positions in the founding Savan lineage, and that Derek had betrayed him, revealing everything he'd done. Then, Salem ordered the people around the herald to be cleared away. Our protagonist asked Tarkv to remove the people. The noble told the children he'd roast them and feed them to the old man if they didn't leave immediately. Ishmael, in turn, stated that he himself was among those who should move away. Next, the protagonist headed to a tent with the chief of the Salasma region. Hearing a harp, he wondered if it was meant to muffle their conversation. The heretic commented that it was all quite good, making Salem look like a true noble. At that moment, the old man was barely holding back from eliminating him on the spot. If Azedine hadn't hidden himself in such a crowded place, he'd already be dead. Azedine decided he should first resolve the situation with Ariel, who had betrayed the heralds alone. Salem asked if he was truly on Ariel's side. In response, the protagonist asked them to revoke his expulsion as he wasn't on his sister's side. Deeming him insolent, the old man asked why he would do such a thing. He thought that, deep down, Azedine and Ariel were faking their fight to deceive others. Our hero dismissed it as nonsense, because Ariel wasn't getting good intel just by having him infiltrate the clan, especially since Azedine was despised by everyone in the Herald clan. Salem was annoyed that Azedine hadn't bowed and begged, but instead confronted him. Even if Azedine wasn't on Ariel's side, Salem didn't want to speak with the Council of Elders to revoke his expulsion. Azedine argued it was the right thing to do, as a young clan messenger was about to die due to a false accusation. As regional chief, couldn't simply ignore such a situation. Anyway, given he was Ariel's brother, many possibilities arose. Furthermore, if the elders and patriarch revoked the decision, the clan's authority would be shaken. At that moment, restoring the clan's discipline and hierarchy was paramount. Azedine believed the reputation, shattered by Ariel's betrayal, would be restored with his expulsion. Publicly, he wouldn't object. In return, however, he wanted his execution order cancelled, and a clear promise that his expulsion would be revoked within 6 months, at most. Salem cut him off, deeming the herald insolent for daring to demand a contract from him. Raising his voice, the heretic declared that with his life on the line, words weren't enough. The old man stated that Azedine had long criticized the decisions made by the elders and patriarch, but now he was crossing the line, and the old man hated him. If Azedine hadn't hidden in such a crowded place, they would have eliminated him already. After that, the protagonist suggested they step out of the tent's shadow to talk properly. Salem asked if Azedine wanted to face him, claiming that even old, he was still more than enough to defeat him. He wanted to finish the boy with his own hands, for he had disrespected him. Suddenly, First Lieutenant Aldis arrived, remarking it had been ages since she last saw Azedine. The old man, saluting Lady Aldis, immediately ceased his quarrel with our hero. She then commanded them to stop, pointing out the crowd of onlookers. Salem questioned Aldis's presence in such a remote location. The woman, having heard of Azedine's expulsion, refused to stand idly by. The moment she learned what happened, she rushed straight to Orenji, demanding to know how he could have made such a colossal mistake. She revealed she had something vital to tell him, a journey that took her 3 grueling days. Aldis then reassured him, explaining she had implored the Grand Patriarch and vouched for Azedine's unwavering loyalty to the clan. Next, Aldis produced the oath, bearing the signatures of leader Hatir and the other elders. The document had been sanctified by the Emperor's own voice, declaring Azedine's expulsion would be overturned in 6 months. Our hero's gratitude poured out for her immense effort. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, stating it was simply the right thing to do. Aldis confessed she had been deeply troubled by his ordeal, finding people utterly devoid of imagination for believing in his betrayal. Our hero assured her he was all right, and his casual reply made her laugh, sparking a fierce jealousy in Midium. Midium, observing Azedine's unique warmth towards Aldis, fumed, recalling his usual indifference towards her. Aldis then voiced her hope that Azedine would grasp the elders' perspective, their unwavering reverence for hierarchy. As she gently stroked his head, a wave of affection passing between them, onlookers whispered, questioning the true nature of their bond. Aldis recalled feeling a profound sense of worry when she first met Azedine and Ariel, noting how much they had truly blossomed since then. Harkonia, the very first patriarch of the Heralds clan, deciphered the whispers of birds, the bloom of flowers, the phases of the moon, and the currents of the wind, gifts bestowed directly by the Emperor himself. He also empowered the Messengers clan to unleash their full potential. For this reason, the clan dubbed the identical purple eyes Harkonia's eyes, and hailed the strongest messenger of each era as Harkonia's living reincarnation. Thus, it was only natural that Aldis, who bore the noble Jeddaha lineage, striking purple eyes, and an overwhelming power, was hailed as Harkonia reborn. The leader of the Heralds clan, Hatir, took Aldis under his direct tutelage, entrusting her with the monumental task of interpreting the Divine King's book copy. In a flashback, Grandmaster Hatir, leader of the Messengers clan, rode his horse, accompanied by a young girl with striking purple eyes. She pointed to a spot, declaring it held what they sought. However, one of the researchers accompanying them met his end attempting to steal the book's copy. This was Akri, the traitor, Azedine's own father. A grotesque scene unfolded as an umbilical cord erupted from his body, a horrifying manifestation of the curse. Hatir never imagined a mere researcher could outwit the heralds and vanish for an entire year. He lamented not knowing the man possessed such hidden prowess. The girl remarked that the children were born from the curse of their service, and Hatir knew the curse's effects would be absolute upon the traitor's offspring. He asked the younger Aldis if she wished to take the infants, reasoning they might be Akri reborn, and a traitor's bloodline must be purged. Furthermore, the service contract stipulated only one birth, yet twins had arrived. As Aldis cradled the boy, she noticed he had no eyes. Hatir already suspected these twins were a dire omen, for only one was meant to be born. The woman argued that his lack of eyes was no reason for elimination. She felt he could see, even without them. Hatir believed it best to eliminate him then, for the Aragasa's destiny would be cruel to them. However, the other child, Ariel, possessed Harkonia's purple eyes, identical to Aldis's own. Aldis pleaded that as mere infants they would perish if abandoned there, asking the herald master if she could take them. The master, deep in thought, finally conceded she could do as she pleased. After all, having lost the Divine King's book copy, it would be good to salvage something. Even with her taking both, accepting a traitor's children was deemed an utter absurdity. Such was the council's furious reaction within the Aragasa sanctuary. One of the men argued this could be an unprecedented opportunity, for the children might be the very embodiment of the Divine King's book. Another, however, vehemently disagreed, arguing they must be eliminated lest they become the book itself. Even those who dismissed that extreme view still concurred. It would be better if both infants simply perished. Hatir warned Aldis that she could not, on her own, push any further. Yet she persisted, declaring she would bestow names upon them both. To her, a child who perished nameless would never find salvation. Thus, born burdened with the clan's hatred, Aldis resolved to name them. The master rose, fury etched on his face, declaring he would never permit her to name them. Naming was a sacred, profound act for the Aragasa, and if she dared, her destiny would be irrevocably bound to the twins. As a Jeddaha of the noble founding lineage, a bearer of Harkonia's eyes, they refused to squander such immense clan talent on cursed twins. Her master demanded why she insisted on caring for the children, even if it meant her own ruin. Cradling baby Azedine, she couldn't quite articulate her reasons. She simply felt it was right to shield a young life in desperate need. Moreover, she had been Akker's friend, understanding his feelings, even his betrayal of the clan. Despite Akker's treachery, she found herself unable to harbor anger towards him. Hatir warned that the elders would punish her severely if they ever heard such words, urging her to speak them only to him. Then the herald leader made a decision, bestowing names upon the twins: the boy, Azedine, and the girl, Ariel. Azedine, the dragon of ruin and void; Ariel, the angel symbolizing light and shadow. They were the central figures of an ancient myth, destined to battle for eternity until they perished together. These names belonged to ancient gods the Aragasa had worshipped long before their arrival in Hubris. 3 years later, Ariel, with her striking purple eyes, was already a master archer, effortlessly hitting perfect shots. It was astonishing how a 3-year-old could wield such powerful mana. Aldis was captivated by Ariel's grimoire and immense mana, believing she could become the clan's greatest ever, even surpassing Harkonia herself. Aldis declared Ariel was stronger and destined to be the most powerful messenger in history. The title of Harkonia's reincarnation might soon belong to Ariel, not Aldis. A herald once asked if Aldis felt frustrated by this rival, but that wasn't it at all. Meanwhile, the boy with no eyes wept, complaining about a boy named Hwari who constantly picked on him. He cried out Ariel's name, and clan members whispered that he had no mana, so unlike his sister. Aldis explained that due to the curse of the oath, twins should never have been born. Originally, Ariel and Azedine were meant to be a single being. His sister embraced him as he sobbed. What resided within Azedine wasn't the essence of birds, flowers, wind, and moon, but merely a residue. This imperfect grimoire caused his mana to erupt chaotically, sending various magical energies spiraling into disarray. While it granted him resistance to dark magic, it also rendered him utterly incapable of using any magic at all. Hatir questioned if Ariel had taken what rightfully belonged to Azedine, if the eyes and grimoire were meant for only one person. A cruel destiny had awaited the boy since birth. The Aragasa clan was undeniably stronger than the people of Wibris. Driven by the ambition to become heralds of the flowers, birds, wind, and moon, the clan revered strength above all else. However, this hunger for power often twisted into corruption, manifesting as blind adoration for the strong and relentless persecution of the weak. This made Azedine suffer immensely, constantly weeping from the bullying he endured from other heralds. They mocked him for wetting the bed, their laughter echoing as he cried. His sister, Ariel, watched from a distance. The boys instantly froze, fear gripping them at her presence. His sightless brother continued to cry, calling out for his twin. She turned her back, and the boys knew well that she became became furious whenever anyone dared to approach him. After she began her basic training, she grew much calmer. Our hero wept, feeling utterly abandoned by his sister, unable to comprehend her actions. Everyone called him useless, claiming he couldn't do anything without Ariel. One day, he sought refuge at a waterfall, pouring out his overwhelming internal pain with nowhere left to run. He screamed and cried intensely, questioning why he had been born this way, feeling as if his heart would simply give out. Aldis ascended the mountain, carrying gifts for the children, wondering if they would enjoy them. Reaching the summit, she noted the view was as breathtaking as ever. Aldis possessed the potent blood of the Yagas gods, far too precious to offer to mere mosquitoes. So she invoked the magic of the flower, birds, wind, and moon Yanjag. Suddenly, she heard the Emperor's voice announcing that a child had fallen into the water. She immediately sprinted, then leaped from the mountain, desperate to find Azedine. She found Azedine in the water and immediately asked if he was all right. The boy quickly responded, calling out for Aldis. Aldis pulled him into a warm embrace, wrapping him in a blanket, and gently asked why he had done such a thing. Instantly, the boy burst into tears. Aldis already knew his training was difficult, but his reason wasn't just that. He had also been expelled and told he would never become a herald. Calming him, the woman assured him that the world offered countless other paths beyond being a herald. She lit a roaring bonfire to warm the shivering boy. She told him to bundle up in the blanket, explaining that his body temperature had dropped dangerously low. Aldis then told Azedine to gaze at the stars from the mountaintop that night. She even brought a book about fairy constellations for them to read together. Our hero asked if stars also had fixed places. Aldis explained that she connected the stars shining in the night sky to form constellations and weave stories around them. These were ancient fairy myths that existed long before the Yagas gods ever arrived on this land. She had studied the languages of the fairies back then. Surely Azedine hadn't known true beauty until then. Not even the starry sky seemed empty anymore. But on that day, when he gazed at the stars with Aldis, they became a sharp, aching longing for him. The Herald clan holds the Solstice Festival every 2 years in the summer. During the festival, messengers from various places gathered at the sanctuary. This event gave Azedine the chance to spend more time with Aldis. He would go to meet her every day, returning the books he borrowed from her, books he had absolutely adored. She would ask him which part he liked most from Introduction to the Order of Saviors, the 3 virtues that claimed one could use white magic if they maintained courage, wisdom, and compassion. And white magic is the power of Yagas' divine kings. Our hero desperately wished he could use magic too. The Order of Saviors, however, mostly seemed like a bunch of tricksters. Even so, Azedine really liked it. Aldis asked him that day if he wanted to become a savior. However, the boy wouldn't admit he did because he was an Aragasa. He'd heard everyone hated the Aragasa, and the reason was their strength. But with Azedine, it was different. He was a weak Aragasa, and he was hated for it. Outsiders hated him for being an Aragasa, and he imagined the saviors would be the same. He thought no one would ever like a face like his. He'd almost died once because they'd covered his face with a sack, finding his appearance so repulsive. Aldis asked if Azedine hated her, and the boy was shocked, saying he didn't. The woman embraced him and said that if he hated himself, he hated her too, because she had forced him to live. The idea of Azedine hating himself would make her very sad. After all, she was almost a mother to him. The book said that with courage, wisdom, and compassion, anyone could become a savior. He would only need to cultivate these 3 virtues for it to happen. Aldis insisted that Azedine could be anything he wanted. After that conversation, a group of boys started bullying him, telling Azedine to drop the Order of Saviors book. They'd heard that Lady Aldis had finally left. The boys noticed Azedine had grown very attached to Aldis and lived well, but now his special treatment had ended. The 3 boys declared that day would be Azedine's end. The children, however, couldn't hurt our protagonist. That's because his sister Ariel suddenly arrived. Yet it was she who severely wounded Azedine, slashing his eyes with her sword. She had arrived moments before the commotion. While the boys thought he was playing the victim to monopolize Aldis's attention, Ariel noticed he was carrying a heretical book. Enraged, Ariel demanded to know why he had that book. She snatched it from his hand, even as he tried to explain it was precious. The boy grew desperate and asked what she was doing. At that moment, she began to beat her twin brother, and the jerks fled in fear of her. His sister asked if he liked Aldis, not as a mother, but as a woman. Hearing this, the boy tried to evade the topic, saying no. On the contrary, his sister knew Aldis only saw him as a son. There was no point in pretending it wasn't true. The age difference between them and Aldis was 12 years at that time. On top of that, she had the blood of the gods and would remain beautiful through the years. Even when they were adults, Aldis would stay the same. She asked her twin brother if he thought he would still see Aldis as a mother at that point. Deep down, Azedine truly had fallen in love, for she was the only one who had shown him that the world could be beautiful. Even if he one day came to desire Aldis, he would never admit it. He didn't want to taint such a pure feeling with something like desire. He had sworn this to his sister in the past, who incited him to feel anger towards Aldis. She claimed that if he wanted the noblest blood, he would need to become the strongest of all Aragasa. She asked if he would have the courage for that, and Azedine lunged at her, wanting to punch her. His sister energized her hand, transforming it into a blade, and slashed her twin brother's eyes. Looking down at him, with superiority and coldness after the attack, Ariel thought, better a scar where his eyes should be than a useless piece of flesh. Ariel told the boy he should thank her for the scar she'd made on his eyes. When he got home, Azedine began to babble, saying he would eliminate her and never forgive her. Filled with rage and his eyes bandaged, he repeated her name with hatred. At that moment, someone arrived and commented that the boy had a lot of energy, saying he was like Azedine of legend, the Crimson Dragon of Muan. Our hero asked who that person was. The person replied that, even without eyes, it was true he could see. It was a person with pointed ears, who told the herald not to be afraid. He introduced himself as Elder Kazas, a blonde-haired elf. Our protagonist was shocked to discover he was an elf. Fearful, the boy begged the elf not to devour him, as those were Nagashura stories. Kazas asked him to calm down, for, ironically, he claimed he had stopped eating human flesh. He told the boy to cheer up, for he had been chosen to be a disciple of the great Elder Kazas, promising to teach the little heretic the poetry of flowers and winds, Kazas style. Our protagonist commented that Kazas wasn't even an Aragasa, implying that the poetry of flowers, birds, winds, and moon belonged to his people. The protagonist told the elf it made no sense, as he didn't know how to use magic. The elf asked the boy if he wanted to know the secret of mages. He stated that if you cut a mage's neck, he would die like anyone else. As obvious as it was, a mage could die if their spine was broken and their heart stopped. The technique that does precisely that is Kazas's technique. Our protagonist asked if this power could conquer the flowers, birds, winds, and moon. Kazas said that if the boy didn't believe him, there was no reason to insist he become his disciple. Kazas learned that the boy had been beaten by his terrifying sister, and that he wanted to break her pride. Azedine asked how he would break her pride with the elder's help if he should retaliate for what she had done to him. At that moment, the elder began to walk away, and the protagonist asked him to wait, pleading for the master to accept him as his disciple. The elf Kazas accepted the boy as his pupil. More than 10 years had passed since then. Back in the present, the conversation flowed between the three of them. Aldis couldn't believe it when he first heard that he had become Master Kazas's pupil. Our protagonist explained that Kazas was indeed crazy, perverted, and an elf, yet he was bearable, and contrary to legends, never devoured anyone. Aldis had nightmares. Convinced the boy would be eaten alive after being handed over to Master Kazas, the protagonist wondered if Aldis truly knew the master, as he'd given up human flesh ages ago. In the past, the elf only snacked on treats and absinthe candy with liquor. He even suspected Aldis herself had recommended him to Master Kazas. Because of the old man, Aldis changed the subject, asking if he knew what Ariel had done. They explained that Ariel had eliminated Elder Kinahan and stolen the copy of the Divine King's book. But this made no sense to Azedine. Ariel had acted exactly like her father, Akri. Azedine considered the possibility of her monopolizing power, but Aldis disagreed. The grimoire needed deciphering, and the more people working on it, the better. Besides, Ariel was already in the second domain, and once the translation was complete, she'd be the first to benefit. Even if she planned betrayal, she'd gain more by waiting for the translation to be finalized. Azedine still believed she could be a traitor, yet the motive remained baffling. The old man told Aldis that Ariel was impulsive and had a cruel temper. No one could predict her actions. Not everyone operates on logic, especially someone like Ariel, who had always been a wildfire out of control. We see Ariel clutching her voice of the Emperor, a raven with a single red eye emblazoned on its chest. The children noticed the conversation had ended as everyone exited the tent. They also spotted the current leader of the heralds, Aldis Jeddah, standing nearby. Ishmael thought she looked like a goddess, and Midium playfully asked if he was into that type. In truth, he simply noticed the prominent traits of the Yaegas gods in her. Rumor had it the Emperor and Harkonia had a child, but it was strange to think that true divine Yaegas blood flowed among the Aragasa. Midium caught Azedine's expression, which seemed utterly smitten. Ishmael, noticing the jealousy, warned his friend that remaining Azedine's servant was dangerous. He believed the Council of Elders would issue an execution order against Azedine because of his sister, an order that would extend not just to him, but to his entire lineage. Ishmael, however, thought it would be different for Azedine. They would demand Azedine eliminate Ariel with his own hands to prove his innocence. Ariel surely wouldn't have started a rebellion without a countermeasure for expulsion and the service curse. Midium asked if he had any idea of Ariel's true motive. For some reason, the boy knew exactly why she did it. Ishmael believed Ariel wanted to halt the decoding progress of the Divine King's book. This stemmed from heredity. The power within the herald's lineage was entirely concentrated in the founder's descendants. Even if the copy was deciphered, that wouldn't change. Therefore, Ariel, being of humble origin, might have chosen to violently overthrow the system. Midium fears Ariel might seduce Azedine. After all, Ariel will try to win over anyone around her to boost her power. Even estranged, Ariel and Azedine are related, so she'll likely approach him. The elders, however, want to exploit this. They plan to infiltrate Azedine as a spy among his twin sister's allies. When Ishmael confirms this is highly probable, Midium's concern deepens. If Azedine infiltrates alongside his sister, it would be more convenient to abandon the servants and act alone. The servants could easily be discarded in the process. The girl fiercely assures Ishmael she won't let that happen. Midium then bristles with annoyance as her master, Azedine, and the other two re-enter the tent. They stir from their nap, the sun already painting the horizon. Azedine asks if Aldis is well, suggesting she should rest more. She seems perfectly fine though, claiming their all-night conversation was fun. Aldis announces her departure, and the protagonist asks where she's headed. She plans to cross into the mists, determined to find Ariel. She warns that the elders might demand he eliminate Ariel to prove his innocence, then directly asks if he'll fight his sister. Azedine replies that if it's Aldis's wish, he will. But the thought of them fighting would make her sad. So the blind man intends to avoid combat, only retaliating if Ariel attacks him first. Aldis dismisses this, stating that won't happen. Ariel wouldn't do that. Azedine tells Aldis he found 2 copies of the Divine King's book. She's impressed he managed to find 2. Our hero takes the pages, asking her to keep them, believing they'd be safer with her. However, she refuses, insisting he should keep them himself. She vows to protect him, but warns that others might overwhelm him. It's better he holds onto the pages as a safeguard, and carrying loose sheets would be a hassle. So, she gives him a bracelet designed to store the Divine King's book pages. The bracelet will also throw off any tracking from Kurt's gods. Aldis then bids Azedine farewell, agreeing to meet at the sanctuary during the summer solstice festival. Our protagonist, ever pragmatic, adds that it will only happen if the festival actually takes place. Next, they continue their journey in their carriage. Finally arriving in Salasma, they ask a heretic for a coin. The city is swarming with so many refugees that disappearances barely register. The regional chief had mentioned numerous missing people, even among the adventurers sent to investigate. It's something the old man should have warned the local herald about first, but he acts as if he's doing them a kindness. Midium urges them not to get so annoyed with the old man, reminding them they're traveling by carriage thanks to him. Tarkv then announces that just beyond the next hill, they'll reach his mother's house, the Baroness. A madman on the street screams that the age of Jupiter is coming. When Jupiter enters the zodiac, he bellows, the demons under Nedstrom will awaken and the end will come. He commands them to repent, uphold the 3 virtues, and help the poor. Midium finds the madman pathetic. I haven't received any revelation about the end of the world, she scoffs. His life is falling apart, and he wants the rest of the world to go down with him. Her companions find her harsh, reminding her everyone has their moments of weakness. If we can't forgive human weaknesses, nothing can truly begin. Midium then retorts, why doesn't he start by forgiving Ariel? Hypocritically, one of them argues that humans are imperfect, and that feeling hatred isn't so wrong. Ishmael notices he's completely changed his tune. Upon reaching the mansion, the noble, Tarkv, immediately starts shouting, calling for his mother. Ishmael warns the herald that not just the house, but all entrances to the mansion are blocked. Tarkv confronts the soldiers, arguing with them for a while. When the heretic questions him about the situation, he explains that his mother has vanished. They decide then to enter and investigate on their own. The noble demands the door be opened so he can personally verify his mother's disappearance. He orders his companions to search the first floor while he heads to the second. Desperate, the noble reaches the second floor, his voice echoing as he calls for his mother, announcing he's finally home. Our protagonist notices the place is clean, but eerily empty. Suddenly, he spots were-rat fur. When he mentions a were-rat passed through, the noble is utterly shocked. The servants of Kurt's god and the Rat King Meseri have been here. Were-rats are twisted creatures, born with the power of the Rat King Meseri, horrifying monsters that feast on human flesh. Tarkv demands to know if the rat men kidnapped his mother. Our hero grimly confirms that the servants of the god of Kurt and Rat King Meseri were indeed present. If they took her, her chances of survival are slim. Suddenly, his eyes catch catch a spiderweb in the Baroness's room. A surge of magic emanates from it, and a chilling memory strikes him. The mercenary captain who cursed Tarkv with a spider was a spider demon. It seems his mother was far from an ordinary noblewoman. The noble knew his mansion held a secret. They quickly uncover a hidden compartment, revealing a distinct spider symbol. Tarkv is baffled. Why would his mother hide this? He recalls that the Spider Queen Atra is revered by noblewomen, granting blessings of seduction. A grim realization dawns. His mother served another god of Kurt, and that's why the rat men took her. Suddenly, the children's shouts echo. Azedine, come downstairs, quick! They've found something in the safe, and our hero is stunned by the discovery. 5 imperial gold coins. Even a single one is a rare sight, but 5 together? Unheard of. What's more, these coins, acquired without formal petition, are worth even more. The noble pledges the coins to our hero if he saves his mother. Azedine, however, states, "Heralds have dignity. We don't steal." Midium retorts, "What good is dignity now that you've been expelled?" Tarkv is shocked. He had no idea. 5 gold coins and her devotion to the Spider Queen Atra reveal his mother's influence runs far deeper than anyone imagined. Outside, he spots a scrap of fabric, the exact color his mother wore. He suspects an underground tunnel lies beneath the well. With so many people missing, he knows countless enemies lurk below. It's a perilous venture, but 5 gold coins are a powerful lure, and there's no other choice. He dons heavy silver armor, a sight that astounds the children. They've never seen a herald in such gear. Azedine explains, "In tight spaces, this armor is your best bet." Armed with candelabras, they descend into the subterranean tunnel. Our hero instructs them to follow the rat men's tracks. His silver armor now doubles as a beacon, reflecting the flickering flame. He notices all the wells connect to this single tunnel, and the footprints lead deeper in the same direction. He extinguishes their lights and orders his group to absolute silence. Our hero spots a bell trap, a clear sign of nearby enemies. He shouts into the darkness, "Who goes there?" A group of figures emerges, drawn by the light they had foolishly emitted. The herald tenses, realizing they've been discovered. He orders the noble, "Impose your authority." The man steps forward, readying his speech. Tarkv bellows, "I am Tarkv, son of the Marquis of Salasma's border." The ragged men erupt in laughter, mocking his claim of knighthood and demanding to know their purpose here. The noble swiftly turns the tables. "That question belongs to you." They claim they're just looking for shelter, but Tarkv sees through the flimsy lie. The undeniable glint of greed in their eyes betrays them. He draws his sword with a chilling shing. Realizing they are rat men, Tarkv slashes out. His blade connects with one's shoulder, and the creature transforms. Fur erupts, claws extend. All 4 reveal their monstrous half-man, half-rat forms, snarling threats. "We'll eliminate the men and take the little girl." Enraged, the noble roars, "What did you do with my mother?" He lunges, but his sword misses. One creature retaliates, striking his armor. The heavy plate holds, shielding him from harm. The rat men jeer, calling him a coward, their fury intensifying. All 4 monsters raise their weapons and charge, intent on slaughtering the men and seizing the girl. Our hero shoves the noble Tarkv aside and lands a powerful punch on one of the rat men's noses, sending the monster flying back, wounded. The others recoil in fear, seeing one of their own taken down with a single blow. Our hero snatches a mace from one of them, declaring the situation perfect. Then he swings the heavy weapon, caving in another rat man's head. The monster collapses, gravely wounded and too weak to stand. In a matter of seconds, the herald had defeated all the monsters. The noble asks the herald if he'll eliminate them all, reminding him they still don't know where his mother is. So the hero decides to beat the information out of them, figuring these were just low-level grunts with no real intel. They find a Mazari crest, curiously drawn in ink. If they can use this info right, it could be a huge help for their mission. They continue through the underground tunnels. Midium spots a grate ahead that leads to the river. Our hero says there's no time to waste, and they need to get out of there immediately. They pry open the tunnel cover and emerge right in the middle of the city. He wonders if they're being too conspicuous, but they had no other choice. Time was running out. Now they need to find the rat men, and Ishmael informs them that they move at night. He suggests they set up an ambush somewhere. That crazy man from earlier is still preaching about repenting sins. Ishmael loses his patience with the doomsday lunatic they saw at the entrance. Even here, he's making too much noise. The children confirm with Azedine if the rat men take people through the underground sewers. Logic suggested that those responsible would have access to a large building and transport to move the kidnapped. For example, the Order of the Knights of Redemption has a big building and recruits people to help. However, the hero states that's not it. Midium advises him to think rationally, reminding him he's a herald, not a knight of redemption. Our hero knows it sounds absurd, but tells them to wait and see. The protagonist approaches the lunatic, who has a flag on his back. The lunatic, thinking someone's come to hear his truth, proclaims that the age of Jupiter is approaching. Azedine wants to make a small donation, believing the lunatic awakens people's consciousness. The religious fanatic considers the young man very pious and accepts his donation. Then, he asks Azedine if the charity shelter is still operating. Azedine replies that the building is in ruins and closed, and charity is now done at the parish in the warehouse district. Azedine asks the lunatic if he's been inside recently. The lunatic replies no, because he dislikes the place. I haven't been in there for a long time. After all, the Knights of Redemption had said there was poisonous gas coming from underground. That's why they forbade entry, and the building is connected to the sewers. They say there's a huge liquor storage down there. The lunatic offers to take Azedine there as thanks for the donation. This is a truth the protagonist didn't want to believe, but it's now revealed. Arriving at the base of the Order of Saviors, they ask the protagonist if he's come for humanitarian aid. The knights notice the protagonist is blind, and he shows them something someone gave him in the sewers. The knights are shocked. The protagonist explains he was told to show that to the knights, and in return, he'd receive food. The knights ask if he received a password or code, and the herald replies, I was told at least 10 people should come, and I don't remember the code. Opening the door, the knights declare he's come to the right place. With a malicious smile, they invite him in, saying the supplies are being prepared. As the protagonist steps inside, he realizes Midium was right and sees blood on the floor. The religious figures comment that no one was supposed to be let in yet, especially not during the day. The knight explains the protagonist is blind and they let him in to help him. The religious figures tell him he can enter and change their demeanor, feigning excitement.